Chapter 491. Coke's Ridge. A spirit beast soared in the boundless skies. It was the third day since Xianxia left Honghai City. The direction which the Soul Oracle tomb was located at a direction opposite of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The geographical terrain consisted of winding mountains reminiscent of a massive dragon lying the ground, ready to rise into the heavens at any moment. Within the room on the back of the spirit beast, Xianxia stood in front of the window with his eyes closed. In the past 3 days, he had reinforced his cultivation as a transcendent mortal one-dan pinnacle cultivator. At this moment, he was currently reorganizing the information he had collected on soul oracles in his mind. Back then, in order to accurately determine the identity of the soulless metal humanoid, Hall Master Sai had collected quite a few books on soul oracles. After duplicating those books from the appraiser hall, Xianxia hadn't been able to find time to browse through them. Since he had some free time now, he decided to make use of this opportunity to look through them. Compile. Muttering softly, the correct information recorded in the dozens of books in the library of Heaven's Path gathered together to form a new book. All of the Soul Oracle-related books collected shared a common description on the occupation mysterious and fearsome. Their deep knowledge concerning the subject of souls made them a fearsome existence. It didn't take long for Xianxia to read through the entire book, and he shook his head. The heritage of the occupation had been severed and there weren't many records left on it. The books remaining were incomprehensive and useful information was terribly limited. After browsing through the books, Xianxia was left with more doubts than he'd started with. Forget it, I'll just deal with whatever that comes my way. Knowing that there wasn't any useful information to be derived from the books, Xianxia sighed. Opening his eyes, he turned to Sun Qiong, Zhao and the others and said, "All of you come here." "Teacher." "Young master." The group gathered around Xianxia. Seeing the grave expression on Xianxia's face, Zhao Feiwu asked, "Since Xianxia has some matters to delegate, should we step aside for a moment?" There were many secrets within a teacher-student lineage that outsiders shouldn't know of. Xianxia waved his hands. "There's no need for it, it isn't something major. I just want to remind them of some things that they have to take note of when we're at the Soul Oracle tomb." "Oh, things to take note of? Then, can we listen in too?" Zhao Feiwu, Hall Master Sai, and the others' eyes lit up, and they hurriedly turned their attention over. Who was the young man before him? He was the master teacher who could even expel a soul oracle from a person's body. Not to mention, he was a 5-star appraiser and quasi-4-star formation master. How could the advice from such a person be anything ordinary? If they were to listen to his words, they would definitely have a much better chance at survival in the Soul Oracle tomb. "Of course, feel free." Ignoring the excited crowd, Xianxia turned to his students and subordinate and spoke gravely. "Take note of this. When we're at the Soul Oracle tomb, if anyone gets possessed, make sure not to devour the other party's soul carelessly. There are questions I would like to ask." If the soul that possessed Luo Zhu was still alive, Xianxia would surely be able to derive useful information from him. If so, there might be no need for him to take the risk and venture into the Soul Oracle tomb. The more he thought about it, the more regretful he felt about the matter. Thus, he made sure to instruct the others properly this time around. Otherwise, if this bunch of kids and Sun Qiong were to rush to devour the soul oracles later on, it would be too late. "Yes." Zhao and the others hurriedly nodded their heads. In order to protect them, their teacher had left a surge of Zhenqi within each of them. Even if some soul oracle were to charge up to them, they would at least be able to avoid being possessed. That's more like it. All right, that's all. You all should continue cultivating." After finishing his instructions, Xianxia waved his hands. Nodding, Zhao and the others nodded and dispersed. Just like that. The others thought that Xianxia was going to conduct a detailed briefing, so they were filled with expectations. However, after hearing those words, the mouths of Zhao Feiwu, Hall Master Sai, and the others twitched. They nearly fainted on the spot. There was no one who wouldn't be filled with trepidation when heading toward a soul oracle tomb, fearful that something might catch them off guard. Yet, this fellow made it seem as though he and his students were just going on a picnic. What in the world was with that official "allow me to have a bite first before you all devour your food" announcement? Cough cough. Luo Zhu even choked on his saliva. For this trip to the Soul Oracle Tomb, he had prepared many things. In fact, he had even written his will. And yet, the other party seemed to treat it like a leisure walk, and there wasn't the slightest worry in his attitude. Humans were truly born different. Suppressing his frustration, Luo Zhu glanced downward at the geographical terrain, did a rough calculation on their current location, and walked up to Xianxia. Xianxia, we're about to arrive at the Soul Oracle Tomb. Xianxia looked around and asked, about to arrive? Where are we now? We're currently at the Myriad Kingdom Alliance's Nine Folds Mountain. 1,000 li of Nine Folds Mountain, 10,000 li of Red Ripple Sea. This is where the border with Xianxia Empire is located. Xianxia's eyebrows shot up. There was a map on the Myriad Kingdom Alliance in the appraiser hall, and Xianxia had browsed through it. As such, he had a rough idea on the various landmarks across the empire. He had thought that the Soul Oracle Tomb would be located in the middle of the alliance, so he was surprised to learn that they were at the border. Xianxia Empire was another empire of equivalent standing to the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. They were also one of the 27 powers participating in the Master Teacher Tournament. The Nine Folds Mountain was the boundary between the two powers, and battles broke out here often. As such, it was considered as one of the danger zones. It isn't at the border yet, it is located at the third fold, Coke's Ridge. Luo Zhu said. The Nine Folds Mountain consisted of a total of 9 folds. There was a more specific name for each fold, and Coke's Ridge was located at the third fold. Legend had it that a powerful expert was once assaulted by a spirit beast stampede passing through the region. Thus, he calmly coaxed them and eventually, the spirit beasts decided to back off, thus came the name of the Coke's Ridge. Spiritual energy was concentrated in this region, thus resulting in many spirit beasts and savage beasts roaming the area. Thus, even though it wasn't the border of the two empires, it was considered as one of the more dangerous locations. Most people would avoid coming here if possible. There are many spirit beasts on the Coke's Ridge, so we can't fly over. Otherwise, there's a chance that we might be assaulted by aerial spirit beasts. Upon hearing the name of the location where they were headed to, Jin Songhai frowned. A transcendent mortal expert was still incapable of flight yet. As such, it could prove to be dangerous if they came under the assault of other aerial spirit beasts. After all, if they were to fall from the sky, at such a high altitude, they would most probably die immediately upon contact with the ground. Thus, very few people would dare to ride a flying mount through where aerial spirit beasts were numerous. Elder Jin is right. However, there's no need to worry. Since Gong's spirit beast has reached transcendent mortal 3-dan pinnacle, most spirit beasts wouldn't dare trifle with it. We should be able to fly straight to our destination. But of course, we can't land directly at the location itself. There's a formidable aerial spirit beast living in the vicinity of the Soul Oracle Tomb. I'm afraid that we might incur its wrath if we were to approach carelessly. You mean that demon-sank beast? Jin Songhai asked. Elder, you also know about this beast? Luo Zhu was taken aback. Of course I do. On top of its ability of flight, it has reached transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle, thus making it a fearsome existence. It has terrorized some of the neighboring villages and killed on numerous occasions. In order to deal with it, the Alliance has tried sending many experts to kill it several times, only to end in failure. With a grim expression, Jin Songhai continued. Furthermore, on top of its speed and strength, it is said to possess a dragon bloodline, thus granting it nearly invincible defense. As such, it's a troublesome adversary to deal with. Even the Beast Hall isn't able to do anything about it. You said that the Soul Oracle is near to its nest. May I know how far away it is? It is only several hundred meters away from its nest. The last time I came, I studied its habits and sneaked in while it was busy looking for food. There are more of us this time around, so it will be easier for us to get caught. Thus, I think we should proceed carefully, Luo Zhu said. Several hundred meters? That's a little too close. Jin Songhai frowned. At transcendent mortal 4-dan clarifying turbidity realm, one's soul would gain a certain level of autonomy from one's body. Under such a state, just by one's senses, one could easily perceive the happenings within a radius of several hundred meters around one. At such a distance, it was almost impossible for them to alarm the other party even if they were to proceed carefully. Even though Jin Songhai was a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert as well, he was only at primary stage. On top of that, the demon Sank beast was an aerial spirit beast possessing a dragon bloodline. He wasn't a match for the other party at all. Even though he could resort to poison, he needed the other party to be unguarded first. Putting aside how the demon Sank beast was wary of humans, the dragon bloodline also provided it with an extremely high immunity to poison. If he were to fail to kill it in a single shot, he might incur the other party's fury and cause everyone's death. The Soul Oracle tomb was already dangerous by itself. To think that there would be such a ferocious fellow camping in the surroundings on top of that. After hesitating for a moment, Luo Zhu said, "It is an extremely short distance, but after hiding in this region for 3 months, I managed to find some patterns in its behavior. As long as we proceed carefully, we shouldn't get noticed. Since you managed to find some patterns in its behavior, why don't we do it this way?" After contemplating for a moment, Jin Songhai turned to Xianxia and asked, "Xianxia, shall we stop 2 kilometers away from the demon Sank's nest and slowly walk over?" Unknowingly, Xianxia had become the de facto leader of the group. It had become a habit for them to look to him for answers. "All right." Xianxia nodded. He had never been here before, and he didn't know about the demon Sank beast or how strong it was. Since the duo had already discussed it, he thought that it should be fine to go along with their decision. 2 kilometers wasn't much of a distance to cultivators of their capability. "All right. Tell me when we're nearing the location. I'll have the tamed beast make a landing," Jin Songhai said. "UN." Luo Zhu nodded. While the others were discussing, Sun Qiong, upon seeing Hall Master Sai's face turn pale after hearing about the demon Sank beast, couldn't hold himself back and asked, "Have you heard of that demon Sank beast as well?" "Of course I've heard of it." Hall Master Sai smiled bitterly. "That fellow is incomparably strong. It's said that the head of the Beast Hall has once led 12 elders to encircle and subdue it, but the operation eventually ended in failure." 12 elders. That's right. Those who are qualified to become elders in the Beast Hall possess cultivation, at least that of my level. Much can be said about the strength of the demon Sank beast given how they failed despite mobilizing so many experts. Hall Master Sai shook his head. "Not only is that fellow capable of flight, due to its dragon bloodline, it possesses incredible defense as well. Even spirit intermediate tier weapons could do no harm to it. On top of that, it has a violent temper and it is extremely territorial. If it is really guarding that area, it won't be easy for us to approach." "Are you afraid?" Interrupting the other party's words, Sun Qiong uttered in disdain. "If you are scared, you might as well leave right now. To think that you're still the head of the appraiser hall." "Me, afraid?" Seeing the other party's expression, Hall Master Sai nearly fainted. To think that a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert like him would be looked down on and mocked by an insignificant butler. Infuriated, he was just about to lash out when Luo Zhu's voice echoed, "We're here." After which, the aerial spirit beast began on its descent, headed straight for the winding mountain range. Chapter 492. Someone is here. Jumping off the back of the spirit beast, Zhongxian took in a deep breath and immediately felt the dense spiritual energy in the surroundings. The concentration of spiritual energy here was indeed much higher than anywhere else. "It's nearly twofold," Zhongxian evaluated. It was no wonder why Jin Songhai and Luo Zhu said that there were many spirit beasts here. With such dense spiritual energy, one's rate of cultivation would definitely be fast. Under such circumstances, it wasn't surprising for spirit beasts to be attracted to the region. Regardless of whether it was a spirit beast or savage beast, just like humans, they preferred areas with high concentration of spiritual energy. Activating the Eye of Insight, Zhongxian surveyed the surroundings. As expected, he saw the traces of many savage beasts and spirit beasts. Why are there so many footprints? Suddenly, Zhongxian's eyes fell on a particular spot. No too far away, on top of the claw prints of spirit beasts, he noticed some human footprints as well. There were nearly 10 of such trails, and judging from the moisture of the surrounding ground, those footprints seemed to be freshly made. Someone has just walked by here. Could they know about the Soul Oracle Tomb as well? Seeing those footprints, Jin Songhai's eyebrows knitted together. A radius of 2 kilometers was about the limit of the demon-sank beast's perception. Before such danger, one should be eager to escape as far as possible. Why would anyone walk in to court their deaths? Unless there was a greater profit driving them. In other words, there was a good chance that someone knew about the existence of the Soul Oracle Tomb as well. This ancient occupation might be mysterious and feared, but it was still a trove of knowledge and power. Many experts would definitely rush in if they were to learn of the location of the tomb. It was just like how the auction of the soulless metal humanoid managed to attract the attention of so many powers. Impossible. The location of the Soul Oracle Tomb is deeply hidden. Even I had to spend a very long time searching before finding it, despite possessing some hints on its location. Besides, when I left the tomb, I sealed tightly and concealed it. Luo Zhu shook his head. The inheritance of the Soul Oracles had been severed since ancient times. The only reason why he could find the Soul Oracle Tomb was due to some information he retrieved from another ancient tomb. The seniors of the ancient tomb's owner had participated in the building of the Soul Oracle Tomb, and they had left behind some hints on its location inside. It took him great effort to decipher the clues to pinpoint the Soul Oracle Tomb to this area. He didn't think that there would be another person who would be as lucky as him. Then those footprints. Jin Songhai questioned doubtfully. I have no idea either. Even though he was certain that the location of the Soul Oracle Tomb wouldn't be exposed, he couldn't help but feel slightly worried by those fresh footprints. Are these footprints pointed toward the direction of the Soul Oracle Tomb? Zhong Xian asked. After calculating the direction for a moment, Luo Zhu replied. That's right. There's no point thinking about it here. Let's go up and take a look. Zhong Xian waved his hands. There was no point getting distressed over the matter here. If someone had really beaten them to it, they might as well just go forward to take a look. It would be best if they could share some information regarding the Soul Oracle Tomb, and if not, he would find some way to deal with it then. Besides, these footprints did not necessarily mean that those people were headed for the Soul Oracle Tomb. UN. Everyone nodded, and the group proceeded forward. The number of footprints are increasing. The further they advanced, the more footprints that appeared. It seemed like quite a substantial group was gathered here. Analyzing the footprints, Jin Songhai said, these footprints are extremely light, and the distance between every single footprint is almost identical. This means that those people possess a powerful control over the environment. From this, we can conclude the ones who left the footsteps behind were mostly transcendent mortal 2 Dan or 3 Dan experts. As a poison master, he was often pursued by his enemies. Thus, in order to protect himself, he had specially studied tracking skills, granting him exceptional acuity in his assessment towards such matters. UN. Zhong Xian nodded. Zhong Xian had never studied books regarding tracking, but based on the feedback from the Eye of Insight, he came to the same conclusion as well. Knowing that the other party was a large group of experts, Jin Songhai's face turned grim. As he advanced forward, he sent a telepathic message to Zhao Feiwu. Gongzi, if there is any danger, summon the tamed beast immediately and leave along with the rest. Zhao Feiwu turned to him and asked, what about you? Even though my fighting prowess isn't top-notch in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, I still do possess some life-preserving skills. If I have to take care of the rest of you while in danger, none of us will survive. Jin Songhai said. As a poison master, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. The one thing that poison masters didn't fear at all was encirclement. All right. Seeing that the other party had already made up his mind, Zhao Feiwu nodded. Even though plundering was rare under the influence of the Master-Teacher Pavilion, it didn't mean that it didn't happen at all. If they were to come under attack in the wilderness, there would be no one to redress their grievances. Even if she was the princess of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, considering how difficult it would be to trace down the culprits, it was unlikely that the enemies would give them any slack. You all be careful as well. Zhong Xian turned to instruct Zhao Wei and the others as well before walking in front of them. Even if he were to meet with danger, with the Eye of Insight, Library of Heaven's Path, and Heaven's Path movement art, he was still able to take care of himself. However, his students had just achieved a breakthrough not too long ago, and they had yet to reach transcendent mortal realm as well. Thus, they might be unable to cope. Yes. Seeing their teachers back in front of them, Xianxia and the others found their anxiety disappearing. Their teacher's silhouette felt like a reliable mountain to them. Regardless of where they were, as long as their teacher was with them, they felt as though there was nothing that they couldn't overcome. After carefully advancing forward for around a kilometer, the group passed a ridge and saw a valley before them. The valley was extremely deep, and they couldn't see the end at a single glance. It was filled with all kinds of trees and plants, and due to the high concentration of spiritual energy, they were exceptionally lush. At this point, the footprints from before disappeared as well. Luo Zhu walked forward and said, "Xianxia, the Soul Oracle tomb is within the valley." UN. Xianxia nodded his head. He was just about to instruct the group to be careful when voila! A few figures appeared from the bushes and blocked the advance of the group. "Identify yourselves." Hostility could be heard the other party's deep voice. Xianxia glanced at the few figures before him. There was a total of 6 men, and all of them were in their 30s. Vaguely, one could sense an aura no weaker than a transcendent mortal 2 Dan from them. The strongest of them, a grey-robed man, had even reached transcendent mortal 3 Dan, yin-yang realm. With this kind of strength, he was on par even with that 4-star master teacher Xianxia met before, Song Chao. "Who are you all?" Stepping forward, Jin Songhai revealed his cultivation. "What do you all intend to do by hiding here?" Transcendent mortal 4 Dan. Upon feeling the immense strength Jin Songhai was exerting, the faces of the men paled. They glanced at one another, and eventually, the grey-robed man said, "Elder, our elders are currently doing something inside and they mustn't be interrupted now. I beseech you all to take a detour instead." Detour. Frowning, Jin Songhai's face darkened. "We have matters to attend inside as well, I ask of you to give way." "Elder, do you intend to barge through?" Seeing that the other party had no intention to give in, the men's complexion turned awful. "Hualala." Crisp sounds echoed in the air as they drew their swords. Even though they were only transcendent mortal 2 Dan and 3 Dan cultivators, they had no intention of stepping back either. "Ha! Even if I do intend to barge through, do you all think you can stop me?" With a powerful and authoritative disposition, Jin Songhai stepped forward. Chapter 493, Hall Master of the Beast Hall, I have to try even if I can't. The grey-robed man didn't retreat. Instead, he stepped forward and beckoned for the others. Then, all of a sudden, with a light metallic buzz, the few men charged forward simultaneously, and their weapons formed a net of swords headed straight toward Jin Songhai. Their cultivation was far inferior to Jin Songhai, but the powerful sword chi they were emitting felt indomitable. A collaborative formation. Jin Songhai frowned. The movements of these men were complementing one another via the usage of a battle formation. Furthermore, from the looks of it, the formation didn't seem to be weak at all. Even with Jin Songhai's superior cultivation realm, he would probably be in for a difficult fight. The main function of this kind of collaborative formation was to amplify the strength of a group to match up to a cultivator far stronger than them. It was just like how Zhao Yue, Yuan Dao, and the others were not a match for Lu Zun individually back then, but through the use of a collaborative formation, they still managed to subdue the latter. Of the 6 men, the strongest person, the grey-robed man, was only a transcendent mortal 3 Dan and the rest were all transcendent mortal 2 Dan. However, through the use of a formation, they could display strength several folds higher. A wave of sword chi gushed straight at Jin Songhai. Even when their opponent was a transcendent mortal 4 Dan expert, they were still able to stand their ground. HMPH. Without the slightest fluster, Jin Songhai stomped his feet on the ground and charged forward. Xianxia gushed into his fingers as he compressed the surrounding air, deflecting the sword chi that were rushing at him. This was the first time Xianxia had seen a transcendent mortal 4 Dan expert fighting at his full strength, and the battle was way beyond his expectations. Every single one of Jin Songhai's moves seemed to carry a unique order. His blows were heavy at a moment, light in the next, and the air in the surroundings seemed to move to complement his movements. Even though the other party's formation was profound and formidable, it wouldn't be easy for them to hurt him. However, he was restricted by the 6 swords. It would be difficult for him to break out of it within a short period of time. Admittedly, if he were to resort to his poison, he could subdue the other party immediately. However, there wasn't an irreconcilable grudge between him and those men. Also, they weren't worthy of having him reveal his hand as well.
Bing, bing, bing.
Both sides clashed furiously with one another, but the shockwave was only confined to an area of several dozen meters. This revealed the precise control they had over their strength. Let me help you. Seeing that it would be impossible for the fight to end in the short run, Hall Master Sai was fearful that if they were to be stalled here for too long, the demon-sank beast might be alarmed. Thus, bellowing deeply, he stepped into the battle as well. His fighting prowess wasn't inferior to Jin Songhai in the least. With his entry, the collaborative sword formation immediately fell apart, and the 6 young men were jolted backward. After several collisions, their swords were knocked away and they fell into a weak state. Given their cultivation realm, it was impossible for them to face 2 4-dan experts simultaneously. All right. Seeing that the 6 men were on the verge of defeat, Hall Master Sai and Jin Songhai prepared to advance forward to deal the final blow when Xianxia suddenly shook his hands. That's enough, we're all on the same side. Hearing those words, everyone was taken aback. Could it be that Xianxia knew the other party? On the same side. The grey-robed man was perplexed, and he looked at Xianxia with a bewildered glance. I am Beast Tamer Xianxia. Ignoring the other party's attitude, Xianxia stepped forward, flicked his wrist, and took out a Beast Tamer emblem. If I'm not wrong, all of you are Beast Tamers as well, right? Upon seeing the emblem, the few men immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Flicking their wrists as well, they took out their emblems. Just as Xianxia had said, they were all Beast Tamers. Frowning, Hall Master Sai asked, "You're all from the Beast Hall?" Probably only the Beast Hall had the capability to dispatch 6 Beast Tamers of such strength simultaneously. Yes. The grey-robed man nodded. I am Sai Xiaoyu from the Appraiser Hall. May I know if your Hall Master is Han Chong or Luo Ming? Hall Master Sai asked. It's Hall Master Han Chong. Sai Xiaoyu. Ah, it's Hall Master Sai. Pardon me for my discourtesy. Hearing the name, the grey-robed man was taken aback for a moment before a figure appeared in his head and he immediately jolted in fear. He hurriedly clasped his fist and apologized. There were 2 Beast Hall branches in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and their Hallmasters were Han Chong and Luo Ming respectively. On the other hand, there was only one Appraiser Hall, and it was located in Honghai City. Even though the cultivation of this Hall Master Sai might be inferior to their Hall Master, due to the vast connections of the Appraiser Hall, they were both of equal standing. Given that the other party was of equivalent standing to their Hall Master, it wasn't a big deal to lose to him. UN, so you're old Han's men. I am old buddies with your Hall Master Han. Upon knowing the background of the few men before him, Hall Master Sai nodded his head. Then, with slight doubt in his eyes, he asked, Your Beast Hall branch should be in the vicinity of the Myriad Kingdom City. What are you all doing here? The Beast Hall branch, which Han Chong was the Hall Master of, was located in the mountains near Myriad Kingdom City. The 9-fold mountains were several 100,000 kilometers away from their base. What could they be doing here? Reporting to Hall Master Sai, our Hall Master is currently in the midst of taming the demon-sank beast. Knowing that the other party was an old buddy of their Hall Master, the grey-robed man decided not to hide the matter. Taming the demon-sank beast? Didn't your Hall Master attempt it 3 years ago, but it ended in failure? Hall Master Sai was perplexed. The one who led the 12 elders to surround the demon-sank 3 years ago, but ended in failure, was exactly this Hall Master Han Chong. Could it be that the other party was unwilling to give up and came here to attempt it once more? Ever since the failure 3 years ago, our Hall Master has been coming here whenever he finds time to interact with the demon-sank beast. After such a long period of time of companionship, their relationship has grown rather intimate. Thus, he intends to give it his all to tame it today. In order to prevent anyone who interrupting him, he ordered us to guard this area and prevent any savage beasts or strangers in, the grey-robed man replied. Hall Master Sai nodded his head. Xianxia also finally understood the situation. Unlike Xianxia, Ordinary beast tamers didn't possess Heaven's Path Xianxia, and they couldn't use it as a bait to convince a savage beast to submit to them. Thus, they could only rely on the fellowship built over a long period of time and win its goodwill to tame it. Back then, when Mo Yu tamed the viridescent eagle, she also used all kinds of treasure to attract it before winning its goodwill. Given Hall Master Han Chong's ability, 3 years was probably more than sufficient for him to earn great intimacy with the demon-sank beast. Thus, gauging that it was about time, he decided to tame it in a single go. Hearing that his old buddy was currently trying to tame Spirit Beast whose notoriety was known in the entirety of the Alliance, Hall Master Sai hesitated for a moment before asking, "Can we go over to take a look? If he were to meet with trouble, we may be able to offer some assistance." Beast taming was by no means an easy task. It wasn't too much if one could tame it, but failure could potentially unleash the wrath of the Spirit Beast onto one. It was said that in the battle 3 years ago, Hall Master Chong was so severely injured that he had to recuperate on the bed for more than a month. All right. After a moment of contemplation, the grey-robed man finally nodded his head. However, you all must be careful as well. The demon-sank beast is arrogant and violent. Make sure not to incur its ire. Given Hall Master Sai's esteemed standing, they were clearly not in the position to stop the other party. In any case, the beast taming hadn't started yet and the Hall Master and the other elders were still in the midst of the preparatory phase. Thus, the latter probably wouldn't blame him if he were to bring some men in. Rest assured, I am an old buddy of your Hall Master. I won't interfere in his affairs. Hall Master Sai smiled. It was beneath the dignity of an expert of Hall Master Sai's caliber to lie. Thus, the grey-robed nodded his head before turning to the other men and instructing, "The rest of you shall remain guard here. Don't allow any savage beasts or strangers to pass through." After which, he gestured forward and said, "Hall Master Sai, this way please." The group followed along. A short distance later, the lush mountain forest suddenly opened up. A waterfall flowed down from the mountain cliff, forming a lake of several hundred meters wide. Not too far from the lake, an immense cavern could be seen. Outside the cavern stood a few elder, and they seemed to be waiting for something. Upon hearing the footsteps, they turned around, and the elder standing at the direct center was just about to lash out when he caught sight of Hall Master Sai within the crowd and his eyes lit up. "Hall Master Sai, why are you here?" "I just happened to be passing by. I was looking for some items when I was stopped by your men. From them, I learned that you intend to attempt taming the demon-sank beast once more. Thus, I decided to come over to take a look," Hall Master Sai said. The other party was the Hall Master of the Myriad Kingdom City Beast Hall, Han Chong. "You also know of my condition. The competition between the 2 beast halls in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance is intense, and only one of the Hall Masters will obtain the opportunity to study at Huanyu Empire. If I don't tame a spirit beast that towered over the others, there's no guarantee I will get the slot." Hall Master Han Chong smiled bitterly. The 2 beast halls in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance had always been competing with one another. For the opportunity to study at a higher-tiered beast hall, the 2 hall masters had been clashing with one another both in the shadows and in the open for several years already. There was nothing that could prove a beast tamer's capability more than taming a powerful spirit beast. Thus, for the past 3 years, Hall Master Han had been trying to tame this demon-sank beast to take the lead. "That's true. I heard that you've been trying to get close with it for the past 3 years. How is the progress?" Hall Master Sai asked. "There isn't much of a difference from before. The demon-sank beast possesses the dragon bloodline, thus giving rise to its arrogant and solitary personality. If it could be tamed that easily, I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. If not for Huanyu Empire's envoy coming in a few days' time, I wouldn't be in such a rush as to thrash it out today." Hall Master Han shook his head. For a spirit beast of this tier, 3 years was still a little too short. However, Hall Master Han had no other choice. The envoy was about to arrive soon, and if he couldn't tame this fellow before then, he would be at a disadvantageous position as compared to Hall Master Han Ming. And if he were to fail the selections, it would be impossible for him to become a 5-star beast tamer in his lifetime. Then the reason why you all are waiting here is, since they had decided they were going to tame the demon-sank beast, then where was the star of the show? Why would they be gathering here instead of looking for the demon-sank beast? It's inside the cavern now. That fellow usually only heads out to hunt during noon. It's still a little too early, so it's still sleeping. Hall Master Han gestured to the cavern. Ah. Hall Master Sai nodded his head. These are your juniors. After which, Hall Master Han turned to Xianxia and the others and asked doubtfully. Cough cough. Upon hearing the other party ask if Xianxia was his junior, Hall Master Sai immediately jolted in fear. He quickly tried to clarify the matter, but Xianxia beat him to it. I am Xianxia, Hall Master Sai's friend. Friend. Hall Master Han was taken aback. As a 4-star appraiser, Hall Master Sai's standing wasn't beneath his in any way. Why would he become a friend with a lad who wasn't even 20 yet? Perplexed, Hall Master Han asked, May I know what Brother Zhong's occupation is? Reporting to the Hallmaster, he's a 2-star beast tamer. I saw his emblem just a moment ago. Before Xianxia could reply, the grey-robed man by the side interjected. 2-star beast tamer. Hallmaster Han's bizarre expression deepened. There were many of beast tamers of such level in the Beast Hall. When did Hallmaster Sai fall so low as to become friends with such a person? Chapter 494, Snatching. So, little brother is a beast tamer as well. To be able to reach 2-star at such a young age, the younger generation sure is impressive. Even though Hall Master Han was perplexed, he didn't allow his true thoughts to slip through. Clasping his hands, he spoke politely before turning his attention away. A 2-star beast tamer under 20 was impressive, but in their beast hall, it wasn't a particularly rare sight. Hearing the other party's perfunctory words, Xianxia couldn't be bothered to explain himself. His aim here was the Soul Oracle Tomb. It didn't matter to him whether the other party viewed him highly or not. It would suffice as long as the other party didn't interfere in his affairs. Hall Master Han, Zhong. Seeing the attitude of his old buddy, Hall Master Sai immediately realized that the other party might be misunderstanding something. He immediately spoke up to explain the matter when the ground before them suddenly tremored and a loud voice echoed. Roar! A loud howl reminiscent of thunder boomed, and the leaves from the nearby withered trees immediately fell to the ground. Impressive! Xianxia's eyebrows shot up. Just the voice in itself was sufficient to jolt a cultivator beneath Xianxia realm to death. For a single roar to be so incredible, as expected of a famous spirit beast in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. It was indeed a fearsome existence. It's awake, let's begin. Hall Master Han's eyes lit up. He immediately turned around to instruct the elders. Upon hearing the instructions, the elders nodded and stepped forward. One of them flicked their wrist. Boom! The massive corpse of a spirit beast appeared on the ground. The corpse of a transcendent mortal 2-dan deer horde beast? You all even managed to hunt down one of those. Upon seeing the corpse, Zhao Feiwu's eyebrows leaped and a look of disbelief surfaced on her face. This spirit beast is incredible. Sun Qiong asked doubtfully. The deer horde beast is only a transcendent mortal 2-dan spirit beast and it isn't particularly strong. However, it possesses extraordinary speed. Its meat is fresh and juicy, making it a favored prey among spirit beasts and cultivators. Unfortunately, their numbers are severely limited and there might not be a single one across the entire Nine Folds Mountain. It must have surely cost a lot of time and effort to capture one. Due to her illness, Zhao Feiwu wasn't able to move around freely. Thus, she devoted her time to books. Given the unique nature of the deer horde beast, she remembered it clearly. Hearing the conversation of the two, the grey-robed man proudly explained, "Looks like you know quite a bit. This deer horde beast took 17 beast tamers over a course of half a year to hunt. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this is the only hunted deer horde beast within the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance at the moment. It'll be impossible to find a second one on the market." Even though the cultivation of deer horde beast wasn't too high, it possessed high wariness and it was exceptionally cunning. If not for so many beast tamers being dispatched for it, it would surely be impossible to capture it. UN. Even though the other party was being narcissistic, Zhao Feiwu knew that there wasn't any mistake in saying so. It was indeed extremely difficult to capture this beast. Back then, a prince of the Alliance was ill and required the heart of the deer horde beast for treatment. Thus, the Alliance head residents offered a high monetary reward for the acquirement of this spirit beast, but there was no result for 5 whole years. Eventually, due to the lack of medicine, the prince's physical condition deteriorated and he eventually died. It was also because of this that she flipped through the books and learned of the deer horde beast. Not only is the flesh of the deer horse beast fresh and juicy, more importantly, this spirit beast feeds on spirit herbs. Despite its weak cultivation, it is overflowing with spiritual energy, making it no different from a tonic. If a spirit beast were to consume it, they would be able to easily overcome their current bottleneck and reach higher realms. Hall Master Sai interjected. In other words, it's a mobile realm breakthrough pill. I see. So, they are intending to use the corpse of this fellow to please the demon Sank beast. Coming to an understanding, Sun Qiong was astonished. To think that they would even procure such a rare and difficult to hunt spirit beast to tame this demon Sank beast. The Hall Master of the Beast Hall had truly gone all out this time. While they were discussing this matter, Hall Master Han took in a deep breath and stepped forward. Brother Demon Sank, I've prepared the items I told you about already. They are right here, come out and take a look. The voice echoed into the cave. There was a moment of silence, and the atmosphere grew tenser by the moment. Just as everyone was about to reach their limit, a loud gust of the wind blew out from within and a gigantic figure flew out. It was a massive spirit beast possessing a height of around 7 to 8 meters. When its wings were spread apart, its length reached more than 30 meters long. Its eyes were scarlet as though fresh blood, giving it a fearsome appearance. At the same time, its body is filled with resilient-looking scales, reflecting its outstanding defensive capability. The transcendent mortal forward and pinnacle aerial spirit beast that everyone within the Myriad Kingdom Alliance feared, the demon Sank. Roar! As though having comprehended the words of Hall Master Han, the massive savage beast looked at the deer horde beast corpse placed in front of him with fiery eyes. Spirit beasts were already capable of absorbing spiritual energy to cultivate, and they possessed intelligence not beneath that of a human. The corpse of this deer horde beast was producing the deep fragrance of herbs and an intense spiritual energy disturbance. At this moment, its instincts were telling it that if it were to consume it, its cultivation would surely soar. Even if it wasn't able to reach transcendent mortal 5 Dan, it wouldn't be too far from it then. Under such circumstances, how could it not feel agitated? Brother Demon Sank, as long as you promise to a condition of mine, this deer horde beast will be yours. Seeing that its interest was piqued, Hall Master Han chuckled lightly. Roar! The demon Sank beast turned its head to Hall Master Han, as though indicating its willingness to listen to the conditions of the latter. For the past 3 years, Brother Demon Sank and I have been spending much time together, and I believe you should now have a clear understanding of what kind of person I am. My condition is simple. I hope that you can become my tamed beast. Hall Master Han said. Don't worry, we can sign an equal contract. This way, I won't be able to force you to do anything you are reluctant to. Roar! Hearing that it had to become a tamed beast, the demon Sank beast's face immediately warped in savagery and it roared in displeasure. It emanated a deep aura of hostility that left one's hair standing on ends. It seemed to be saying that if Hall Master Han dared to continue talking about the matter, it would surely make a move. As a bearer of the dragon bloodline, it was of esteemed standing. How could it possibly be willing to submit to a mere human and serve as its lackey? You shouldn't be in such a hurry to make your decision. Seeing how the other party refused him without the slightest hesitation, Hall Master Han's complexion turned awful. However, he quickly veiled it and chuckled. I believe you should know of my standing among the humans. I am the head of the Beast Hall, a figure respected by many. Brother Demon Sank, as long as you follow me, I will treat you as my peer and fulfill anything you ask of to the best of my ability. The lifespan of spirit beasts might be long, but how long does it take for you to raise your cultivation by absorbing spiritual energy from the surroundings? You will be entitled to much better resources if you were to follow me. After finishing those words, Hall Master Han beckoned to the elders behind. A few elders stepped forward and a bunch of spirit stones appeared on the floor. They were all low-tier spirit stones, but they stacked up into a mini mountain. There was at least several thousand of them, and their appearance immediately caused the spiritual energy in the surroundings to surge. Just by taking a whiff, one could feel their pores opening up and an indescribable feeling of comfort would envelop one. Humans weren't the only one who could utilize spirit stones for their cultivation. Spirit beasts were the same as well. Cultivating through absorbing spiritual energy from spirit stones would surely be much faster than simply absorbing spiritual energy from the surroundings. There's a total of 8,000 spirit stones here. As long as you agree to the condition, I can give them all to you right now, Hall Master Han said. The reason why he could take out so many spirit stones while Hall Master Sai wasn't able to was not because the latter was poor. Rather, Hall Master Sai had spent the bulk of his money on collectibles, resulting in the amount of spirit stones he could take out at a moment to be severely limited. In terms of total assets, the latter would surely be far superior. It was just like those antique collectors in the world Xianxia lived in prior to his transcension. If those collectors were to sell their entire collection, they would surely be drowning in cash. However, as finding a suitable buyer for these items were difficult, the amount of cash they could take out at a given time might not compare up to some of the wealthier merchants. If you aren't interested in these spirit stones, you might be interested in this. Seeing the lack of response from the demon sank beast after taking out the bunch of spirit stones, Hall Master Han hesitated for a moment before gritting his teeth. Flicking his wrist, he took out a jade box. Slowly opening it, a spirit stone came into sight. Boom! The moment the box was opened, the spiritual energy in the surroundings immediately grew so dense that it was nearly tangible. It felt as though as long as one was holding onto the spirit stone, even if one didn't attempt to absorb it, the spiritual energy would still seep into one's body, enhancing one's body. To put it simply, if one were to place this spirit stone by the side of an infant, even if the latter didn't cultivate, nourished by the spiritual energy contained within it, his body would become incredibly powerful and it would be immune to common illnesses. In less than 2 months, its physical body would become no weaker than that of a Pigu realm cultivator. Could this be a middle-tier spirit stone? Xianxia clenched his fists tightly in agitation. Having read innumerable books, he knew a thing about two on the various tiers of spirit stones. The spirit stones in his possession at the moment were of the most inferior grade, low-tier spirit stones. Low-tier spirit stones were sufficient to support the cultivation of a cultivator of transcendent mortal 4 Dan and below. Any higher than that would require spirit stones of higher grade. Taking Xianxia for example, due to the incredible purity of Heaven's Path Xianxia, even though he was only at transcendent mortal 1 Dan prolonged longevity realm pinnacle, low-tier spirit stones were already nearly ineffective on his cultivation. If he wanted to reach origin energy realm, on top of completing the Heaven's Path divine art of that level, more importantly, he needed a middle-tier spirit stone. That spirit stone in Hall Master Han's hand was more than sufficient for his cultivation to rise from prolonged longevity realm pinnacle to origin energy realm pinnacle. While quantity could make up for the disparity in quality, this logic only applied if the disparity in quality wasn't too great in the first place. With sufficient straw, one might be able to buy a diamond. However, the properties of a straw could never achieve the properties of a diamond. Thus, even though 10,000 low-tier spirit stones could be exchanged for a middle-tier spirit stone, it couldn't replace the effectiveness of a single middle-tier spirit stone. That's right, it is a middle-tier spirit stone. Not expecting his old buddy to take out such an invaluable object, Hall Master Sai's eyes widened in shock. Middle-tier spirit stones were incomparably expensive. There wasn't more than a handful of it throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The value of it could only be greater than the deer horde beast. Roar! Seeing the middle-tier spirit stone, the eyes of the demon sank beast grew even redder. In truth, Hall Master Han's heart was also bleeding from taking out his greatest treasure. However, he knew that it would be impossible to hook in the demon sank beast without this much. Thus, clenching his jaws, he continued, "As long as Brother Demon Sank agrees to becoming my tamed beast, this middle-tier spirit stone will be yours." Brother Demon Sank, what are you intending to do? Before he could finish his words, the demon sank beast flapped in massive wings and charged forward. Its talons swooped forward swiftly amidst raging winds to grab the spirit stone in Hall Master Han's hand. Snatching? The heck? Chapter 495. Fearmongering Hall Master Han felt dismal. Over the past 3 years, Regardless of what the other party wished for, he had definitely given his all to procuring it just to please the other party. All he wished was to earn the other party's gratitude so that the other party would consider their relationship when he tried to tame it. Yet, this fellow forgot about their relationship as soon as a treasure appeared, and even went to the extent of snatching it. The heck? Could he be any greedier than this? If only he knew that the other party was so ungrateful, he would have never gone through so much trouble. Activate the formation. Judging from how the other party was ferociously charging at him, it probably didn't have any intention of stopping until it laid its claws on the middle-tier spirit stone. Knowing that this wasn't the time to get depressed, Hall Master Han bellowed. Since the carrot didn't work, he could only utilize his final resort, forcing the other party to submit through violence. This was the least preferable method due to the overwhelming strength of the demon-sank beast. Even though the beast Hall had the numerical advantage, capturing it alive was a terribly difficult task. If not for such, Hall Master Han wouldn't have wasted his 3 years pleasing the other party. While he was confident that he could convince the other party to submit through 3 years of relationship and the allure of profits, he still made preparations for the worst possible scenario. He had set up a formation here in advance in case something went wrong. To think that he would really end up using it. Yes. Nodding their heads, the elders dashed off in 4 different directions, and driving the Xianxia in their body to the maximum, they grabbed at the air before them. Boom! At a distance several hundred meters in front of the crowd, a mist slowly drifted into appearance, catching the demon-sank beast off guard. In its short moment of hesitation, the mist completely surrounded it. It's a confinement formation. Having learned the Heaven's Path formation art, even without utilizing the library of Heaven's Path, Xianxia's comprehension of formations was comparable to a 4-star pinnacle formation master. Iron Chain Confinement Formation. Recognizing it, Jin Songhai's eyes narrowed. That's right. Xianxia nodded in agreement. Iron Chain Confinement Formation was a formation created by a 4-star pinnacle formation master more than 1,000 years ago. It made use of the violent spiritual energy in the natural surroundings to form overlapping iron chains that bound life forms trapped within its area of effect. Even struggling free of the chains was a huge hurdle, needless to say, escaping from the formation. A Grade 4 Pinnacle Confinement Formation. Staring at the impressive formation before him, Xianxia remarked, "It seems like Hall Master Han is truly determined to capture this fellow." A formation of this level couldn't be set up on a whim. A formation master had to study the geographical terrain in advance to determine the various hiding spots for the formation flag. Afterward, he had to hide the formation flags underground without leaving the slightest trace so as to not incur the suspicion of the demon-sank beast. Even for a 4-star pinnacle formation master, it was impossible to achieve this without several months of preparation. Indeed. If I'm not mistaken, in the past 3 years, on top of pleasing this large fellow, he has made a lot of various preparations beneath the surface as well. Hall Master Sai smiled bitterly. Given the duration of time required to set up the formation and that the assistance of a 4-star pinnacle formation master was required, it seemed like his old buddy was determined to make this operation a success. It was probably after he suffered a setback 3 years ago that he thought of this idea. On the surface, he did his best to please the demon-sank beast, but in the shadows, he secretly hired others to set up this formation in case things didn't go as planned. Xianxia shrugged. It's perfectly normal for him to do this. A beast tamer must always consider the possibility of failure. If he couldn't do this much, he couldn't have possibly become a 4-star beast tamer. Not even high-rank beast tamers could guarantee their taming to be successful every single time, especially when dealing with a ferocious and proud spirit beast. Hall Master Han had already failed once. If he were to confront the demon-sank beast without sufficient preparation in hopes of taming it, he wouldn't be worthy of his position as the head of the Beast Hall, a 4-star pinnacle beast tamer. Roar! While the group was chatting, the trapped demon-sank beast realized that he had fallen for the other party's ploy and it howled furiously. It went on a rampage and destructive force shook the surroundings. It's futile. Hall Master Han harumphed as he walked forward. With a flick of his wrist, a screen appeared in front of his crowd, reflecting the current circumstance of the demon-sank beast. At Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan, its Xianxia had already evolved into origin energy, allowing it to utilize unimaginable means. This screen was similar to the wall in the corridor housing the sea of formations in the Formation Master Guild, allowing one to clearly view the situation within the formation, as well as serving as a platform to communicate with the prisoner inside. The thick chains created through immense quantity of spiritual energy locked the demon-sank beast firmly in place. The feared demon-sank beast thrashed around violently, trying to free itself from its confines, but to no avail. "I've already told you, it's futile. I advise you not to waste your strength." Hearing its frenzied howl, Hall Master Han chuckled lightly. Roar! Hearing those words, the rage of the demon-sank beast crescendoed. 3 years of fellowship had made it lower its wariness toward the other party. Otherwise, how could it possibly overlook a formation that was set up at the entrance of its nest? It didn't expect this to put it into a perilous situation. Resentment gushed through its mind like a huge torrent, and if looks could kill, Hall Master Han would have been torn into countless shreds by now. This is a Grade 4 pinnacle formation. You might be powerful, but it'll be impossible for you to escape without knowing the correct method. Why don't we continue our previous conversation? As long as you promise to become my tamed beast, everything I've promised you before still holds. If not, I believe you should be more than aware of your current circumstances. It might be a pity to kill you, but you're no use to me otherwise, Hall Master Han said. In truth, he didn't want to come to this step. Even if he were to successfully tame the demon-sank beast after this, it would be impossible for him to win the heart of the latter. That would be equivalent to a potential threat hanging over his neck. But the other party simply refused to submit to him, even going to the extent of snatching his item. Left with no choice, he could only resort to this. Roar! Seething with anger, the demon-sank beast glared at Hall Master Han with its massive eyes. "You need not give me your answer so quickly. I have the time to wait for you." Seeing its attitude, Hall Master Han shook his head. Even so, he wasn't anxious in the least. Since the other party was already trapped, at the very most, he just had to expend more spirit stones to sustain the formation. No matter what, Hall Master Han was determined to tame the other party. Even though he had threatened to kill the other party, that was more of a mean to coerce the other party into submission. After all, once the other party was killed, his 3 years of effort would have gone in vain. Infuriated, the demon-sank beast struggled. However, it wasn't able to struggle free of the iron chains which bound it tightly. Eventually, realizing that it couldn't free itself of its confines like that, it lay down and slowly closed his eyes. "Hall Master, what do we do?" Seeing that the huge fellow had calmed down instead, the other elders stared at one another in confusion before walking up to Hall Master Han. "What else can we do other than wait? Elder Hu, take out the deer horse beast and roast it. Make sure that the aroma reaches the demon-sank beast. I don't believe that gluttonous fellow can hold himself back when such delicacy is placed before him," Hall Master Han said. Even when raw, the deer horde beast carried the deep aroma of herbs. Roasting it would surely whet one's appetite. As an embodiment of gluttony, it would be a wonder if the demon-sank beast could hold itself back. Honestly speaking, Hall Master Han's mastery in the art of beast taming was truly formidable. The aroma of the deer horde beast was a clear contrast of the demon-sank beast's current plight and the other possibility if it were to give in. This would surely gnaw at the other party's determination, luring it into submission. An ordinary spirit beast would have surely given in at this point. Yes. Elder Hu nodded. Just as he was about to start the fire to roast the deer horde beast, the 2-star beast tamer from before shook his head with a helpless look and said impassively, "I advise you not to roast the deer horde beast." Elder Hu frowned. Why? Not expecting that a mere 2-star beast tamer would interfere in their affairs, Hall Master Han and the other elders stared at one another as displeasure appeared on their faces. Even the least capable of them was a 4-star primary beast tamer, and it was common consensus that roasting the deer horde beast was the best course of action at the moment. Otherwise, there would be nothing they could do. Yet, a 2-star beast tamer was dared to refute their decision? "Nothing much, I just fear that the situation might evolve beyond your control if you were to roast it." Shaking his head, Xianxia decided to say no more. Even though he was a master teacher, he wasn't a Samaritan. There was no need for him to interfere in everything. Besides, the other party seemed to be looking down on him. It's just the roasting of a deer horde beast. What kind of situation could happen from it? Seeing how the young lad wasn't able to back up his claim, Elder Hu harumphed coldly. Did he really take all of them 4-star beast tamers as fools? If catastrophe could really come from this, they would have long noticed it already before a mere 2-star beast tamer could. Forget it if you aren't willing to listen. Xianxia sighed. He had done his part already. Since the other party was reluctant to listen, he wasn't willing to speak any further as well. Humph, seems like you're just a fear-mongering, arrogant brat. Elder Hu flung his sleeves. The others also didn't seem too pleased by Xianxia's comment. This was especially so for Hall Master Han. If not in consideration that the other party was Hall Master Sai's friend, he would have surely lashed out already. What did a mere 2-star beast tamer know to dare to speak up on their affairs? How boorish. Enough, go and roast the deer horde beast. With a cold expression, Hall Master Han waved his hands. Initially, he still held some considerations over the other party given how Hall Master Sai addressed the other party as his friend. However, from the looks of it now, he was just a rude liar. The situation might evolve beyond control. It was just the roasting of a deer horde beast. What could happen? Other than testing a person's tolerance, what else could possibly happen? Yes. Nodding his head, Elder Hu, along with some of Elders, stacked up some firewood and started roasting the deer horde beast. As beast tamers, they often had to camp in the wilderness for many days to lay in wait for a savage beast. Thus, it was inevitable that they would pick up such basic survival skills. Hoo. Soon, the campfire was lit and the deer horde beast was placed on top. Sizzling sound echoed as a deep aroma began wafting in the area. Roasting the deer horde beast, which had lived by feeding off spirit herbs, further brought out the fragrance hidden in its body. The roasting had just barely begun, but the crowd was already salivating. Let's retreat. Catching a whiff of the fragrance, Xianxia shook his head. Retreat. Hall Master Sai and the others were taken aback. We should be at least several hundred meters away, or else we might be implicated as well. Saying so nonchalantly, Xianxia took the lead and retreated away from the deer horde beast. As soon as he walked away, Zhao Yue, Zhao Feiwu, and the others hurriedly followed along. Hall Master Sai was put in a position, but after hesitating for a moment, he chose to tag along as well. These fellows. Seeing how the group turned around and left, saying that they might be implicated, bulging veins appeared on Hall Master Han's forehead, and he nearly erupted. Failing to tame that huge fellow had already filled him with rage, and the depressing words of this fellow were threatening to ignite his rage. You are just a 2-star beast tamer. To act as though an unfathomable expert with that deep expression of yours. Why don't you just become an actor? Chapter 496. Bizarre happenings. Truthfully, if it had been any other 2-star beast tamer that said such words, Hall Master Han surely wouldn't have gotten angry. What triggered him was the expression of that fellow who spoke. The other party acted as though he would surely suffer if he didn't heed his words. Not to mention, the contempt in his eyes couldn't be any more apparent. To think that a 4-star pinnacle beast tamer like him would be looked in contempt by a young lad. Contempt your head. This demon-sank beast possesses the dragon bloodline, resulting in its proud nature. It's normal to be unable to tame it. Do you really think that I wish to go this far? It's precisely because there's no better solution that I'm doing this. HMPH. Conceited. It sure is a wonder why Hall Master Sai would become friends with someone like you. Don't bother about them. Focus on the roasting instead. The more aromatic it is, the better. Suppressing his rage, Hall Master Han instructed. Yes. Elder Hu and the others nodded, and they increased the intensity of the flame. The aroma of the deer horde beast immediately grew deeper, inducing groans of protest from one's stomach. While that group was about to erupt from rage, Xianxia and the others stopped at a distance several hundred meters away. This will do. Xianxia waved his hands. Xianxia. The crowd turned to look at him with questioning gazes. They had absolute trust in Xianxia's capability. Since he had said that something was going to happen, there was a high chance that something would happen. Is Xianxia worried about a stampede occurring? A thought flashed past Hall Master Sai's mind, and he frowned. Given how the aroma of the deer horde beast is diffusing in the surroundings, and considering the irresistible appeal of it to the spirit beasts, it is highly likely that a large group of spirit beasts might be attracted into the area. But, if a stampede is going to occur, won't we still be caught in it at this distance? Under the charge of thousands and thousands of savage beasts, all life forms would be torn to shreds. If a stampede were to really occur, even if they were to escape several dozen kilometers away, they would still be caught within it. That seems possible. Everyone also came to a realization. What Hall Master Sai said made sense. There was indeed a high probability of a stampede occurring. Such a matter had occurred in Coke's Ridge before, so this wasn't an unfounded worry. Given the aroma from the deer horde beast, it wouldn't be surprising if spirit beasts were lured in. But if it was such a situation, shouldn't they run away as far as possible? Wouldn't it be courting death if they chose to remain here? A stampede? You sure have wild imaginations. Hearing those words, Xianxia was speechless. Since even you all can tell that other spirit beasts could be lured in by the aroma of the deer horde beast, do you all think that a group of 4-star beast tamers would neglect this possibility? The crowd's faces immediately turned red. That was indeed true. Since even outsiders like them could tell that much, how could 4-star beast tamer veterans neglect such a possibility? Since the other party could even foresee the rejection of the demon-sank beast and prepared countermeasures in advance, they must be prepared for the possibility of a stampede occurring already. Don't worry, such a thing can't possibly happen. Xianxia shook his head. Why? Zhao Feiwu was bewildered. Even humans like them found it hard to hold themselves back before the allure of the deer horde beast. How could spirit beasts possibly resist it? Seeing how the usually astute Gongzi asked such an obvious question, Xianxia rolled his eyes. Even though the deer horde beast is very aromatic, how far do you think the smell can diffuse to? Zhao Feiwu was immediately stumped. There was no doubt about the allure of the meat, but at their current distance, the aroma was already barely discernible. If they were to go any further, it would be completely undetectable already. Even though spirit beasts possessed far stronger senses of smell than humans, it would still be impossible for them to discern a smell several kilometers away. Besides, where do you think we are? We are on the territory of the demon-sank beast. Even if other spirit beasts were to catch a whiff of the aroma, do you think that they would dare to gather here? Xianxia continued. Zhao Feiwu blushed in embarrassment. Powerful spirit beasts and savage beasts demarcated their own territories, and weaker beasts wouldn't dare to step into their boundaries. After all, the moment they stepped past the boundary, there was a high chance they would be killed as a prey. The demon-sank beast could be considered as the strongest spirit beast throughout the entire Nine Folds Mountain. Given the duration it had lived here, how could there be any nearby beasts who still dared to trespass on its territory? Wasn't that courting death? If I'm not mistaken, in a 10-kilometer radius where the demon-sank beast lives, there won't be any other spirit beasts. No matter how aromatic the deer horde beast is, it's impossible for it to cause an uproar among spirit beasts beyond 10 kilometers away. Xianxia explained. 10 kilometers. Only then did everyone finally came to a realization. Stopping 2 kilometers away, it was true that they hadn't spotted any spirit beasts along the way. Even though they had noticed a few footprints, they were sparse. Most probably, those belonged to spirit beasts who accidentally wandered into the area and fled hurriedly after smelling the demon-sank beast's scent. Otherwise, given that they were a large group, it was odd that not a single spirit beast had come forward to pester them. No matter how aromatic the deer horde beast was, it was impossible for a spirit beast that was 10 kilometers away to smell it. And even if one did, would it dare to walk in here? This was the territory of the strongest spirit beast in the Nine Folds Mountain. It was no wonder why Hall Master Han had no fear. He probably already knew in advance that it was impossible for a stampede to occur. But if it isn't a stampede, what other situation could happen? Eventually, they returned back to the original question. Look on, you'll understand soon enough. Xianxia didn't explain the matter. Since Xianxia was unwilling to speak, the others didn't think that it was appropriate to question him further. At that point, Hall Master Sai suddenly requested awkwardly, "If there's any danger, I beseech Xianxia to save Hall Master Han. The only reason why he snubs you is because he doesn't know of your capability. In truth, he isn't a bad person." No matter what, Hall Master Han was his friend. He couldn't possibly watch on nonchalantly if the other party was in danger. If something really happens, I'll help him. However, I just fear that they might not be happy if I do make a move. Chuckling softly, Xianxia's eyebrows shot up. All right, you all should continue watching. It should be about time. Hearing those words, the crowd turned their sights to the front. At this point, the cooking of the deer horde beast was about to be finished. The aroma had already reached an unbearable level. These elders were all skilled in outdoor survival skills, and they had brought some seasoning along with them for this operation. Even though it was abrupt, their skills weren't inferior even to the top chefs of Honghai City. Not just the aroma and the taste, even the tone of the meat was perfect. Just the sight of it was enough to induce uncontrolled salivation in one. Brother Demon Sank, can you smell it? If you become my tamed beast, this will be yours. Besides, you only have to stay by my side, so there's nothing for you to lose. Once my lifespan reaches its end, you'll be free once more. What else is there to consider? Knowing that the aroma had already permeated through the entire formation, Hall Master Han continued, "Hurry up and make your decision, or else we'll be eating the deer horde beast by ourselves. By then, it'll be too late. I believe that you should know the value of the deer horde beast as well. This is the only one in the entire Nine Folds Mountain, and once you miss it, you'll surely regret it for life." Hall Master Han's words were indeed very persuasive. Any other spirit beast would have already been convinced by now. However, the eyes of the demon sank beast were still tightly shut, and it remained completely motionless. It seemed as though it was asleep. When did the demon sank beast become so docile? At this moment, Zhao Feiwu also realized that something was wrong. According to the legends passed down in the Mirade Kingdom Alliance, this fellow was ferocious and savage. Back then, someone had also tried to use a formation to trap it. However, it was a pity that the stamina of the demon sank beast seemed to know no limits. Soon, under its struggling, the spirit stones in the formation ran dry and it broke out of the formation. Formations could be sustained by both spiritual energy in the surroundings and spiritual energy from spirit stones. The former would require a long charging period for the formation to be sustained, whereas the latter only demanded sufficient spirit stones. But regardless which of the two it was, formations required an energy input to sustain it. To cope with the struggling of the prisoner, it would have to expend a greater amount of energy. Once the spirit stones ran dry, even if one didn't know the exact method to break the formation would still crumble by itself. This was precisely the reason why the corridor of the Formation Master Guild had a time limit of 2 hours. If not, as long as the examinee struggled, it would just be a matter of time before the energy in the formation ran dry. Breaking out of the formation under such circumstances wouldn't be a test of one's skill. Despite the ferocious nature of the demon sank beast before, it chose to lie down as though an obedient child. Even though it was interested in the deer horde beast before, there wasn't any signs of it wanting to break out of the formation. This was contrary to its nature. Hall Master, it's done. Just as everyone was puzzled, Elder Hu and the others were done cooking the deer horde beast. The golden spirit beast meat and the deep aroma made it irresistible to all. Good, bring it over. Hall Master Han nodded. Elder Hu and the others nodded as they brought the cooked deer horde beast flesh over. Do you see that? If you were to hesitate any longer, we'll be digging in. Hall Master Han chuckled as he turned his gaze to the deer horde beast. Just as he was about to pick it up to entice the other party, his eyes suddenly widened in astonishment and he erupted. What the heck is this? Who in the world ate it? Ate it? Everyone turned their sights over, only to see the previously intact deer horde beast missing a limb. Only a trail of bones hung limply on the body. In other words, someone had secretly eaten one of the limbs. Hall Master Han was frenzied. Who in the world was the one who ate the deer horde beast? Even though he kept saying that they were going to dig in, it was actually just a method to coax the demon-sank beast. If they were to really eat it, the possibility of taming it would drop to zero. In other words, he was just saying it. It was impossible for him to really do it. Why, in the blink of an eye, did a limb suddenly go missing? Not to mention, not the slightest piece of meat was left on the limb. Aren't you all going too far? Don't you all know how much effort I have put into taming this fellow? Hall Master Han glared coldly at Elder Hu and the others. Hall Master Sai and that infuriating 2-star beast tamer had left as soon as the roasting process started, so it was impossible for them to be the culprit. The only plausible suspects were the elders standing before him. Hall Master, we didn't do it. Being glared at by the other party, Elder Hu and the other leaped in shock. They hurriedly shook their hands in denial. They had been swallowing their saliva and suppressing their agitation while roasting it, not daring to nibble the slightest bit of it. They were also baffled by how a limb went missing all of a sudden. You didn't do it. Are you saying that the flesh flew away by itself? Hall Master Han lashed out. What kind of teammates did I find? I asked you all to roast the meat to entice the demon-sank beast into submission, and yet you all ended up feasting on it yourself. What is wrong with you all? Hall Master, it really isn't us. I can swear to that. Seeing that the Hall Master didn't believe them, Elder Hu raised his palm to vow to the heavens when he suddenly froze, and his expression slowly warped in shock. Hall Master. What's wrong? Hearing the sudden exclamation, Hall Master Han traced Elder Hu's gaze back to the deer horde beast meat, and he nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. The deer horde beast, which was initially missing one limb, was missing two now. Staring at the bare bone hanging off its body, an air of eeriness floated in the area. Chapter 497, The Pummeled Hall Master Han. Who was it? Looking around, Hall Master Han raised his hands warily. At that moment, it was clear that it wasn't Elder Hu and the others who'd eaten the deer horde beast. But, other than them, who else could it be? Who in the world could eat the deer horde beast without his notice? This was way too sinister. Hall Master, look. Elder Hu pointed. Lowering his head, Hall Master Han immediately realized what was going on. Unknowingly, a dense layer of golden worms had crawled onto the deer horde beast. They were each around the size of an ant, and wherever they passed by, the meat would vanish, leaving behind only bones. Clearly, the two limbs were cleared away by these insects. These worms were extremely small, and their color resembled the tone of the roasted flesh. Thus, if one didn't pay close attention, it was easy to overlook them. What are those? Hall Master Han was taken aback. Despite being a 4-star beast tamer, he realized that he had never seen those worms before. Hall Master, could these be? Suddenly recalling something, Elder Hu's body froze and fear reflected in his eyes. You're saying that? Seeing the other party's expression, Hall Master Han froze for a moment before fear slowly crept onto his face. Yes. Otherwise, how could any creature consume the flesh of the deer horde beast so quickly? Elder Hu swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If it's really that thing, we could really be in trouble. Suddenly recalling something, Hall Master Han lifted his head and looked at the screen, only to see the eyes of the demon-sank beast wide opened, gleaming with energy. The edges of its gigantic lips suddenly curled up coldly. Xianxia, what is that? Upon seeing that bizarre sight, Hall Master Sai couldn't help but ask. As the head of the appraiser hall, his knowledge pool was formidable, but even so, he had never heard of such a bizarre creature. The others also turned their gazes over. Xianxia had predicted this would happen and brought them over. From the looks of it, this must be what he was worried about. They're soul-devouring ants, Xianxia said with a grim expression. Soul-devouring ants. The crowd was bewildered. They had never heard of them before, needless to say, know what they were. However, as soon as Luo Zhu heard that name, his body immediately froze and disbelief surfaced on his face. Legend has it that these ants are the nemesis of soul oracles. They are beings who sustain themselves by consuming souls and spiritual energy. Soul-devouring ants were bizarre creatures who were capable of devouring soul and spiritual energy. As such, they were the nemesis of soul oracles. Why would such insects be found near the cave of the demon-sank beast? Instead of replying his words, Xianxia turned his head over and asked, "If I'm not mistaken, the Soul Oracle tomb that you are talking of is located under the lake, am I right?" "You? How did you know?" Luo Zhu was taken aback. He had only said that the Soul Oracle tomb was in the vicinity. He had never revealed the exact location, so how in the world did the other party know about it? Tombs were all about geomancy, and being buried beneath a lake was commonly known to be inauspicious. No one in the right mind would choose to do so. Thus, if one were to tell another that there was a tomb underwater, one would definitely be mocked by others. Back then, when he looked up the relevant books and found its exact location, he was still in disbelief. This was the reason why he was so confident that no one could have found it. However, the person before him pointed out the matter in an instant. Could it be really related to these soul-devouring ants? Soul-devouring ants live by consuming souls, thus making them the nemesis of soul oracles. However, these things fear water, so the only way to avoid them and not be devoured by them is to be buried underwater, Xianxia said. The books that Hall Master Sai gathered on soul oracles might not have had much useful knowledge, but it still provided some basic knowledge for Xianxia to work with. Besides, soul-devouring ant was a type of spirit beast recorded in the books of the Beast Tamer Guild. After looking at the ground with his eye of insight, he had already noticed some peculiarities. With some deduction, he swiftly understood the situation. Isn't being buried underwater inauspicious for both the living and the dead? The one who asked the question wasn't Luo Zhu but Zhao Feiwu. Learning that the tomb was beneath the lake had left her astounded. She had spotted the lake as soon as she arrived in the area, and under the ceaseless torrent from the waterfall throughout the years, its current depth was unimaginable. To build one's tomb at the bottom of it, wouldn't one be afraid of one's resting place being washed away by the water, unable to rest in peace even after death? To the soul oracles, they could always possess another physical body to come alive again. Death was nothing more than a temporary sleep to them, and geomancy and the like didn't apply to them. Thus, it didn't matter where they built their tomb, Xianxia explained. Oh! The crowd came to a realization. The main reason why tombs were placed at a location viewed to be auspicious was in hopes that they could bring luck to their future offspring. However, soul oracles didn't think that death was permanent to them, and thus, it didn't matter to them where their tomb was located. But that's not right. After a moment of hesitation, Luo Zhu suddenly recalled something and said, "Even though the Soul Oracle tomb is located beneath the lake, it isn't submerged in water at all. Thus, even if the soul-devouring ants are unable to step into the water, they should be able to enter the tomb by burrowing their way into it." Then why? If the Soul Oracle tomb was submerged in water, he wouldn't have been able to explore it, and wouldn't have been possessed by a soul within the tomb. That day, when he entered the underground tomb, even though it had been sealed for innumerable years, the air was dry and permitted one to breathe. Since even humans could enter the tomb, soul-devouring ants would surely be able to do the same as well. If that was the case, how could the soul have survived there for so many years? If I'm not mistaken, you are the one who brought all of these soul-devouring ants over, Xianxia said. Me? Luo Zhu was taken aback. Even though he had heard of soul-devouring ants, he had never met one in his life before. How could he possibly be the one who brought them over? The Soul Oracle tomb is tightly sealed. For innumerable years, it remained secluded from the outside world. However, not only did you open the tomb, you even came out with a soul on you. Naturally, the scent of the souls leaked out. As such, these fellows who specially prey on souls were attracted here. However, due to the limited time of their arrival, they haven't found the entrance yet. If we had delayed for another month, then even if we were to enter, we surely wouldn't be able to find anything at all, Xianxia said with a grim expression. Soul-devouring ants were the nemesis of the soul oracles, so naturally, soul oracles learned how to guard against them. They knew how to prevent the scent of their souls from leaking out and prevent bringing attention upon themselves. However, Luo Zhu didn't. If Xianxia wasn't mistaken, these soul-devouring ants had probably arrived not too long ago. Otherwise, they would have already burrowed beneath the deep lake instead of loitering around the surface and wouldn't have been attracted by the aroma of the deer-horde beast. This. Luo Zhu's face paled. He was actually the one who brought those fearsome things here. Just the thought of it sent shivers down his spine. Recovering from his shock, Luozhu suddenly thought of something and asked doubtfully, even though soul-devouring ants favor consuming soul and the meat of the deer horde beast, they shouldn't have needed to escape so far, right? Under normal circumstances, those ants won't harm humans, right? Soul-devouring ants were bizarre and abhorrent creatures, and they were the nemesis of the soul oracles. However, to ordinary humans, they were completely harmless. Was there a need for them to escape several hundred meters away? You're right in that the soul-devouring ants won't do any harm to us. However, you mustn't forget that on top of consuming souls, these insects consume spiritual energy as well, and what a formation primarily drives on is precisely spiritual energy. Zhong Xian explained. Formation. Taken aback, everyone was stunned for a moment before their eyes slowly narrowed. They hurriedly turned their gazes over. Damn it! Seeing the opened eyes of the demon-sank beast, Hall Master Han also realized that something was amiss and his body tensed up. Given that the soul-devouring ant was hidden underground, even though he was a beast tamer, it wasn't too surprising for him to have failed to notice it. However, the demon-sank beast was different. Spirit beasts were exceptionally sensitive to their surroundings, not to mention, this was its nest. Thus, how could it possibly be unaware of the arrival of these guests? It seemed like it knew that those guests would be attracted by the scent of the deer horde beast, and knowing their ability to consume spiritual energy, it was without fear. That was why it chose to close its eyes, lie low, and wait. The moment the spiritual energy of the formation had been completely consumed by those soul-devouring ants, the formation would be like a carriage without a steed. Without a driving force, how could it possibly operate? Upon thinking of all this, Hall Master Han hurriedly instructed, increase the energy and reinforce the formation. However, before he could finish his words, a furious howl echoed. The trapped demon-sank beast suddenly moved, causing the ground to tremor. Huala! The spiritual energy chains locking it, as though having been nibbled on by something, broke apart in an instant. After which, an incomparably powerful aura gushed out from the body of the spirit beast. Both its wings flapped furiously and it flew out of the formation. The formation collapsed entirely, and the mist shielding everyone's view disappeared. Following which, everyone saw the massive body of the demon-sank beast charging straight toward Elder Hu and the others. Roar! A furious bellow. Flapping its wings, huge gusts of wind were whipped up. What? Before Elder Hu and the others could react, they were already struck and sent flying. Blood spewed from their mouths in midair. A transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle spirit beast was typically already stronger than human cultivators of the same level. On top of that, it was just captured and forced to submit. All of the resentment accumulated in its heart caused it to go into a rampaging state. How could the elders of the Beast Hall withstand against such might? In just a single move, all of them were already injured. Damn it! Not expecting this fellow to be so callous, disregarding their 3 years of relationship, Hall Master Han's face steeled. Raising his hand, a long spear appeared in his grip. Even though he was a beast tamer, his fighting prowess as an individual was formidable as well. He had already reached transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle as well. As soon as the spear left his hand, it immediately charged forward as though a mighty dragon, headed straight for the demon-sank beast. Facing the offense, the demon-sank beast didn't even bother to dodge. He simply faced it straight with his physical body. Ding ding! The incomparably sharp spear came into contact with the demon-sank beast's chest, but it failed to even pierce through the latter's skin. Needless to say, it was unable to injure the beast. What formidable defense! Zhong Xian, Hall Master Sai, and the others stared at one another with widened eyes. They knew that the spirit beast's dragon bloodline had granted it unparalleled defense among its peers, and ordinary weapons couldn't hope to overcome it. Even so, that was an attack which Hall Master Han had placed his full might into. It was a shocking sight to see that it didn't even leave the slightest mark. It was no wonder why its notoriety would be known throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom alliance, and why the multiple attempts of the royal family in eliminating it ended up in failure. It was indeed a force to reckon with. Roar! After deflecting the spear with its chest, the demon-sank beast roared furiously. Its powerful voice enveloped the area with rampaging might reminiscent of a storm. At the forefront, Hall Master Han bore the brunt of the attack. Despite being a transcendent mortal four-dan pinnacle, he still felt a little faint-headed and nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. Hoo-la! After the roar, the demon-sank beast swept its massive wings. A cloud of dust immediately rose into the air, and a massive tear appeared on the ground. Hall Master Han swiftly summoned its spear back to protect himself. Even so, the disparity in the strength of both parties was too great. With a numbing sensation in his arm, he was sent flying as though a ball being kicked into the distance. Pu! Even in midair, blood kept gushing out of his mouth, causing his face turn ghastly pale. With his internals rattled by the overwhelming force that struck him, Hall Master Han felt as though his body was tearing apart. At this very moment, a thought suddenly emerged in his mind. Did the two-star beast tamer predict that this would happen? Chapter 498. Despairing Hall Master Han, the two-star beast tamer, had advised him against roasting the deer horde beast, and thinking that it was impossible, he refused to listen to the other party's advice. As such, the other party left along with his group for fear of being implicated in the trouble. Initially, he thought that the fellow was just fear-mongering, but to think that trouble really occurred out of it. Could it be that he had actually predicted the appearance of the soul-devouring ants, the collapse of the formation, and the current, disastrous situation? That's impossible. Soul-devouring ants are extremely rare spirit beasts. Even I was unable to make the link out of the blue. How can such a young two-star beast tamer possibly have foreseen this? Even though he knew that it likely was the truth, he still found the entire matter too hard to believe. In ancient times, soul-devouring ants were the nemesis of the soul oracles. But ever since that era had passed, the entire species had disappeared from sight for a very long time. As such, very few people knew about their natural habitat, characteristics, and such. How could such a young beast tamer possibly discern so much within a few short minutes? Even five-star beast tamers didn't possess such means. This thought disappeared as soon as it appeared in his mind. Even if he wished to pursue the matter, the current circumstance didn't allow for it. Landing on the ground, he suppressed the stifled sensation in his chest and straightened his back. Then, flicking his spear in his hands, he looked at the massive savage beast and said, "Brother Demon Sank, no matter what, we have been together for 3 years. You should understand my character very well. I have no intentions of hurting you at all. How about this? Why don't we just forget about this matter? Let's continue to get along as equal peers. Why you? Stop. Why are you still charging here?" Before he could finish his words, the massive figure appeared right before him once more. Raising its claws, it struck down on him. Pang! Blocking it with his spear, Hall Master Han was knocked backward once more. Even though they were both at transcendent mortal four-dan pinnacle, there was an irreconcilable disparity in their strength. He wasn't a match for the other party at all. Don't force me. Did you think that the formation was my only trump card? Shit. Having been attacked relentlessly by the other party, Hall Master Han's chest ached from the heavy blows directed at him. Infuriated, he lashed out. However, before he could finish his lashing, he was struck once more by the wing of the demon-sank beast. He was sent rotating several rounds in the air before crashing heavily down. At this moment, Hall Master Han felt extremely dismal. If only he'd known that the roasting of the deer horde beast would attract the soul-devouring ants and destroy the formation, he would have never done so. In the end, not only did the deer horde beast become a gift to the soul-devouring ants, the target he was aiming to tame was also in a berserk state. It seemed as though the other party would never rest as long as he was still breathing. He snuck a glance at the two-star beast tamer, Hall Master Sai, and the others, and this single glance nearly caused another mouthful of blood to spurt from his mouth. At a distance several hundred meters away, the young man from before was looking at him leisurely as he lectured his students. Do you all see that? This is the consequence of not listening to the advice of others. In the future, when you all explore the world by your own, make sure to remain humble and keep an open mind to the words of others. In any case, just don't be like him. Also, even though that previous move of his looked incredible, it's actually a complete failure. If he had launched that attack half a breath earlier, the demon sank beast's movements would surely have been interrupted. To be able to use perfectly fine moves to such an extent, his fighting techniques are truly mediocre. Thus, you all must train your battle techniques diligently. Don't always think about conquering this and that. Rather than wasting your time on such immaterial accomplishments, you should work hard on raising your fighting prowess. The young man commented as he lectured his students. Hearing those words, Hall Master Han's eyebrows leaped furiously. If he could, he would have charged forward to pummel that young man. The heck? I am a transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle expert, the head of the Beast Hall. Why, in the view of an insignificant figure like you, did I suddenly become a person incapable of anything at all? But, what left him even more frustrated was that, analyzing the other party's words carefully, he realized that the other party's words were actually spot on. Even if he wanted to refute those words, he had no idea where he could start from. There is something bizarre about that fellow. When I'm done dealing with the demon sank beast, I will have to ask Hall Master Sai about it. No matter how foolish he was, it was clear that the young man was extraordinary. Most probably, he must have noticed something in advance, that's why he spoke those words. However, this wasn't the time to be conflicted over this matter. Twisting his body, he dodged the demon sank beast's offense and raised his head. Brother Demon Sank, since you refused to agree to my offer of reconciliation, don't blame me for getting nasty. After which, he took a breath and flicked his hands. While he was being continuously forced back by the demon sank beast, Elder Hu and the others had been making preparations. Even though they had been knocked away by the demon sank beast, those were mainly superficial injuries. A moment of meditation was more than sufficient to get them back to their full strength. Upon hearing those words, they immediately got into position and drew their weapons. Huala! Their aura harmonized together as one, forming a collaborative offense formation. It's the same formation as the one the younger beast tamers used previously. However, this one is much more profound and stronger. From afar, Xianxia couldn't help but nod his head. It was a rare opportunity to view the battle among transcendent mortal 4-dan experts. Naturally, he should explain the entire battle to Zhao Ya and the others so that they could learn from it and improve. Indeed, this formation further augments their individual strength, allowing their battle prowess to soar several folds. Jin Songhai nodded. Even when crossing hands with the younger beast tamers outside, if not for his experience and superior cultivation, it would definitely be difficult for him to triumph over them. Since even the juniors were already so powerful, not much had to be said about the seniors who had immersed themselves into the formation for such a long period of time. Not to mention, their cultivation realms were also far superior, resulting in a vast difference in the might of both formations. If they were the ones whom we were facing previously, even if there were 8 of us facing them, we still wouldn't have had the strength to retaliate at all. Taking a glance, Hall Master Sai couldn't help but remark. The reason why the both of them could suppress the formation of the young beast tamers previously wasn't because the formation was weak, but because their cultivation far exceeded that of the other party. On top of that, the young beast tamers weren't familiar with the collaborative offensive formation either. But Hall Master Han, Elder Hu, and the others didn't have such a flaw at all. It was clear that they had practiced the formation for several years already, and every single move of theirs had a deep intention behind it. On top of that, their teamwork was exquisite, so as soon as the formation was executed, their fighting prowess immediately soared to formidable heights, thus exerting a huge pressure on the demon sank beast. Awed, Hall Master Sai commented, "So, this is his true trump card. For the formation to be so powerful, it seems like they began practicing this collaborative formation straight after the failure 3 years ago. The confinement formation they used previously was formidable, but what if the other party was determined not to give in? Eventually, it would just be a matter of time before the formation ran out of power and the demon sank beast was let loose." Thus, Hall Master Sai was perplexed as to whether Hall Master Han had any backup plan to deal with this situation. From the looks of it now, this seemed to be it. The collaborative formation made up of the several elders harnessed immense power, making them a match for even a transcendent mortal 5-dan primary stage expert. Dealing with a 4-dan pinnacle demon sank beast shouldn't be much of a problem. Do you think that they can win? Seeing through Hall Master Sai's thoughts, Xianxia chuckled. Their teamwork is flawless, and the might of the formation is also formidable. They should be able to suppress the demon-sank beast entirely. Hall Master Sai said. As a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert, he was able to gauge the fighting prowess of these elders accurately. The collaborative offensive formation was profound, and it augmented the strengths of every single individual in it. No matter how powerful the demon-sank beast, it would be hard for it to withstand the combined might of the group. Should be able to. Xianxia shook his head. Since they have their trump card, what makes you think that the demon-sank beast doesn't have one? If a single collaborative offensive formation could bring it down, it would have been eliminated by the forces dispatched by the Myriad Kingdom Alliance long ago. Back then, even the many experts sent by the Myriad Kingdom Alliance ended in failure. To even entertain the thought that a single formation could subdue this demon-sank beast was a gross underestimation of its ability. Besides, this is in fact a slaughter formation. However, given that Hall Master Han is reluctant to kill the demon-sank beast in hopes of taming it, his movements will be severely limited. This will prevent them from bringing out the full might of the formation. After studying the Heaven's Path formation art, Xianxia's understanding of formations had reached an astounding level. Even though he didn't know the name of the collaborative offensive formation, he could accurately discern its properties and might. Hall Master Han was too focused on taming the demon-sank beast, and this would cause him to subconsciously hold back in his offense. In other words, he was treating this slaughter formation as a confinement formation. With the might of the formation greatly reduced, it was just a matter of time before the group fell apart. And just like Xianxia had said, initially, Hall Master Han and the others had the upper hand. However, as the demon-sank beast gave up on its defense altogether and attacked recklessly, the formation was swiftly torn apart. A few minutes later, the elders were swept away by the wing of the demon-sank beast and incurred heavy injuries. They spat out huge mouthfuls of blood. Pang! Eventually, under one of the attacks from the demon-sank beast, Hall Master Han's spear was knocked out of his hand, and he crashed onto the ground. Who? After breaking the formation, the furious demon-sank beast immediately stomped its massive foot on Hall Master Han. If Hall Master Han were to be really stepped on by that humongous figure, no matter how powerful he was, it would be difficult for him to escape from his demise. Seeing that his life was at risk, Hall Master Han bore with the intense pain pricking at his body and got up. Summoning the strength he had into his palm, he prepared to receive the other party's blow. Pang! The foot came into contact with his palm, and for a moment, there was a stalemate. However, the pressure on the foot only grew stronger and stronger. Just as Hall Master Han was coming to the verge of his endurance, and he thought that he would be reduced into meat paste, an anxious voice shouted, "Xianxia, I beseech you to save Hall Master Han." The one who spoke was Hall Master Sai. After years of being friends, he couldn't bear seeing his old friend dying before him. However, he knew the extent of his ability well. He wasn't even a match for his old buddy, needless to say, this monster that could easily subdue him. Thus, the only option left was to request for Xianxia's help. Xianxia's cultivation was far beneath his, but after the past few days of interaction, he found himself being continuously shocked by the other party's miraculous means. Perhaps, he might have a solution to save his old buddy. "I am not a match for the demon-sank beast either, how do you expect me to save him?" However, contrary to his expectations, the young man gave a negative reply. Hearing those words, Hall Master Han despaired. He thought that 3 years of fellowship and the various hands he had prepared beforehand would allow this operation to end in success. Never in his dreams did he expect for this fellow's strength to be far beyond his, resulting in a completely one-sided fight. "Please, you must have a solution. Otherwise, if the demon-sank beast were to kill Hall Master Han, it'll definitely come for us next." Hall Master Sai pleaded anxiously. "Oh, I do have a solution." The nonchalant voice of the young man sounded. "What is it?" Hall Master Sai asked in agitation. Hall Master Han's body also tightened. Seeing a ray of hope, he immediately pricked his ears to listen closer. "Simple, we just have to ask this fellow to release him," the young man said. Having his ray of hope abruptly crushed, Hall Master Han spurted a mouthful of blood and fell into despair. Chapter 499. Taming the demon-sank beast release him? Aren't you spouting the obvious? Who doesn't know that that is the most direct method? However, look at how furious this fellow is. It seems as though it is ready to murder anyone. Do you think that it's possible for it to release him? Trapping the other party and using a collaborative offensive formation, this had already created an irreconcilable grudge between the two. At this moment, the demon-sank beast couldn't wait to kill the latter to vent his resentment. Release? You must be joking. He thought that since this young man was able to predict the appearance of the soul-devouring ants, he might just be able to come up with a brilliant situation to save him. To think that he would be so unreliable as well. Asking for the demon-sank beast to release him would probably only hasten his death. Depressed, Hall Master Han gave up all hope. At that moment, he heard Hall Master Sai's voice sound. Release? What do you need? I'll go make preparations now. There's no need for any preparations. As long as I tame that fellow and make it my tamed beast, it will surely listen to my words, the young man said nonchalantly. Tame it and make it your tamed beast. Hall Master Han's vision went dark, and for a moment, it felt as though he had seen all wonders in life. Over the course of the past 3 years, the treasures which he had presented to the demon-sank beast could already make up a massive mountain. Not to mention, for this operation, he had used the deer horde beast, middle-tier spirit stone, and various other treasures to entice it. Even so, the demon-sank beast didn't even consider accepting the offer in the least. How dare you speak as though taming it will be so easy? If it is that easy, do you think that I would be trampled beneath its foot at this very moment? Forget it, I shouldn't depend on this fellow. I should think of a way myself instead. Knowing that it wasn't a viable option to depend on this young man, Hall Master Han exerted his strength and attempted to push away the other party's foot. However, as soon as he exerted more strength, he felt the force weighing down him increasing proportionately as well. Boom! A huge shock wave rippled into the surroundings, and Hall Master Han was pushed deeper into the ground. A cloud of dust rose into the air, cloaking his face with dirt. Pu! Fresh blood spewed from his mouth once more. Under the immense force, his injuries worsened, and his consciousness was slowly getting hazy. To think that I would end up dying here. Desolation gripped his heart. Having engaged in beast taming his entire life, he thought that with his innumerable means, he would surely be able to turn this big fellow into his tamed beast. Never in his dreams did he expect that he would end up dying under the foot of the other party. Just the thought of it left him frustrated. Just as he was about to close his eyes and await his impending demise, he suddenly heard a sound that resembled both the call of a cow and the rumbling of thunder. Then, the immense force crushing down on him suddenly vanished. Touching his body, he affirmed that he was still alive and that the demon-sank beast, who was intent on crushing him into a lump of meat, had removed its foot. Baffled, he opened his eyes to take a look, and with a single glance, his entire body convulsed and he nearly fainted. This. His lips twitched intensely, and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. Hall Master Han seemed to have seen an inconceivable sight that was pushing the boundaries of his rationality. The arrogant demon-sank beast which was charging at him furiously to slaughter him so as to vent its resentment was currently lying obediently in front of a figure. Its head was closely aligned with the ground, and its thick tongue licked the other party's foot relentlessly. With a respectful expression, it fawned on the figure as though a loyal dog serving its owner. It was an indescribably crude sight. What was going on? Wasn't that fellow arrogant to the extreme, refusing to serve anyone even if it had spelled its death? Shouldn't nothing have been able to move it at all? Why, in the blink of an eye, did it suddenly start licking the shoes of another person? Besides, what is with your look of reverence? You are salivating, you know? You look as though you hate the fact that you don't have 2 tongues to lick both shoes of the other party at once. Can you at least retain some basic decency? Rubbing his eyes forcefully, Hall Master Han tried to confirm whether he was seeing things when the figure in front of the demon-sank beast pushed the face of the latter away impatiently. Go and chew on the grass by the side instead. Pu. Hall Master Han's body swayed from side to side. The demon-sank beast is treating you so respectfully, and yet, you still pushed it away? Not to mention, asking it to feed on grass? It's a carnivore. How can it possibly eat grass? But another shock awaited him. Without any hesitation, the demon-sank beast immediately rushed to the side excitedly, opened its mouth widely, and began chewing on the grass joyfully, as though afraid that someone might steal it from him. "Pah!" Thinking that he might be dreaming, Hall Master Han sent a forceful slap to his face. The intense pain helped him to sharpen his consciousness, and looking over once more, the demon-sank beast was still waging a war with the grass by the side. The hell? What on earth is going on? Clawing on his head frenziedly, Hall Master Han felt as though something had gone wrong with the world. He had caught a clear glimpse of the figure whom the demon-sank beast was fawning on. It was the 2-star beast tamer who had advised him previously, Xianxia. After 3 years of effort, the demon-sank beast remained nonchalant to him, and even went to the extent of trying to kill him. Yet, this fellow only roared once, and the other party immediately licked his shoes and chewed on the grass by the side. Where has the fairness of the world gone to? Is the 4-star beast tamer me or you? Suddenly, an idea emerged in his head. Could this be the reason why Hall Master Sai is acting so politely around him? He had been perplexed over why Hall Master Sai would choose to treat this young man with utmost respect, and from the looks of it now, it seemed like this young man wasn't just a simple 2-star beast tamer. Otherwise, how could he possibly make the demon-sank beast lower its pride to such an extent and submit immediately with just a single howl? Adjusting his breathing, Hall Master Han bore with the pain and walked up to the young man. "Thank you, beast tamer Zhong, for saving my life. If not for the other party taming the demon-sank beast, he would have surely died." No matter what, the other party had saved his life, and this made him indebted to him. Waving his hands casually, Xianxia said, "I am only doing this because of Hall Master Sai's plea. If you must thank someone, thank Hall Master Sai. If not for Hall Master Sai, I wouldn't have even bothered. Still, it's only right for me to thank Beast Tamer Zhong. If not for your help, I would have surely been dead by now." After thanking Xianxia once more, Hall Master Han turned to Hall Master Sai and clasped his fist. "Hall Master Sai, thank you. We've been buddies for so long, there's no need for you to stand on ceremonies." Hall Master Sai's face reddened. "Besides, I'm of no help at all. Xianxia managed to tame the demon-sank beast all by himself." Xianxia. Even though he had heard this address before, he thought that he might have just heard wrongly. After all, he was in the midst of battle, and there was a considerable distance between them and him. However, it was impossible for him to be mistaken this time around. His heart immediately jolted. Could the young man before him be a master teacher? Not only is Xianxia a master teacher, he's also a 2-star beast tamer, 5-star appraiser, quasi 4-star formation master. Hall Master Sai explained. Master teacher, 5-star appraiser, and quasi 4-star formation master. Hall Master Han's face paled. He thought that the other party was just a 2-star beast tamer. That was why he took the other party lightly. How could he have known that the other party would have so many occupations? Putting everything aside, just his identity as a master teacher already made him of superior standing to him. Master teachers were not to be made light or sullied. Those who dared to do so would be beaten to death on the spot, and no one would dare to speak up for that person. Not to mention, the other party was a 5-star appraiser and quasi 4-star formation master on top of that. Of course, our young master isn't just limited to these occupations. He's also a physician, apothecary, and painter. Seeing that the other party was stumped, a plump man walked out from the back of the young man and harumphed. 7 occupations. Hall Master Han swallowed a mouthful of saliva and his mouth started trembling. A person would have to spend much effort just to master one occupation. And yet, the person in front of him had already mastered 7. When did such a monster appear in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance? It was no wonder why Hall Master Sai paid such high regards to him. If he knew that the other party had such identities, he would have never dared to try pulling his weight before him. Indeed. But putting that aside for now, our young master has saved your life. Did you think that a single thanks would suffice? The plump narrowed his eyes and stared at Hall Master Han in disdain. I recall seeing you offer quite a few good things to the demon-sank beast when you were trying to tame it. Why? Do you think that your life isn't even worth that of a single spirit beast? I. Hall Master Han's body froze. Indeed. It was a breach of propriety to brush off his savior with just a word of thanks. Initially, I intended to use this spirit stone to attract the demon-sank beast and tame it. Taking out the middle-tier spirit stone from before, Hall Master Han glanced at the demon-sank beast, who was still busy chewing on grass. Knowing that it would be impossible for him to tame it at this point, he gritted his teeth and passed it over. However, it seems like there's no use for it now. I'll give it to Xianxia as a token of appreciation for saving my life then. The plump man took the spirit stone, fiddled around with it, and frowned. Just one. I only have this single one. Hall Master Han's face reddened. There weren't too many middle-tier spirit stones throughout the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. It took him a lot of effort and luck just to procure this one. All right then, so be it. Seeing that this was the limit of the financial ability of the other party, Sun Qiong shook his head and presented the spirit stone to Zhongxian. Young master. UN. Catching it, Zhongxian nodded his head in satisfaction. Honestly speaking, Sun Qiong was truly a capable subordinate. He was able to accurately deduce that Zhongxian was interested in the middle-tier spirit stone, and knowing that the latter probably made a move for it, he stepped forward and closed the deal. In the end, master teachers weren't saints. It wasn't unusual for one to demand reward after doing another a favor, and master teachers were no exception as well. Otherwise, given how many people were in need in this world, wouldn't he die of exhaustion? Putting away the spirit stone in his storage ring, Zhongxian turned to Hall Master Han and said, I just happen to require middle-tier spirit stones, so I'll humbly accept your gift. But in any case, I won't take advantage of you. In exchange, I'll treat your injuries to compensate you. Treat my injuries? Hall Master Han was stunned. You're saying it's possible to treat such severe injuries? Under the relentless heavy blows of the demon-sank beast and overexertion of his body, his internal organs had been shifted and his cultivation had fallen greatly. It would be difficult to treat such injuries at his age. Thus, when Zhongxian said that he could treat him, the first thing he thought was that it was impossible. Since I've said it, naturally, I'll be able to do it. However, if you don't wish to, we can drop the matter. Zhongxian waved his hands. Of course I want to be treated. Recalling the other party's identity as a physician and master teacher, Hall Master Han hurriedly nodded his head. If it was in the past, he would have never believed such words. However, looking at the demon-sank beast obediently chewing on a patch of grass, he couldn't help but think that the young man before him just might be capable of doing so. After agreeing to the matter, Hall Master Han asked, Xianxia, do you need any medicinal herbs? I have some of them here. Even though he wasn't a physician, as a cultivator and a beast tamer, he still retained some basic knowledge on medicine. Given the extent of his injuries, without the complementation of centuries-old medicinal herbs, it would be very difficult for him to make a full recovery. And he happened to have some of these medicinal herbs. Just as he was about to take these things out, the young man before him spoke up. Medicinal herbs. There's no need for any. Demon-sank beast, come over and knock this fellow out for me. Chapter 500. Knockout Treatment Method. Knockout? Not only did Hall Master Han widen his eyes, the others were baffled by Zhongxian's actions as well, and they stared at one another in confusion. Aren't you going to treat Hall Master Han's injuries? What do you mean by knocking him out? There's no need to worry. This is our old master's exclusive technique, knockout treatment method. Sun Qiong explained. Having followed behind Xianxia for a period of time, he knew that this was the old master's exclusive technique. As the direct disciple of the old master, it was natural that the young master would know of it as well. The crowd became even more perplexed. To treat someone by knocking them out. Such a method existed in the world? Who? Before the crowd could react, the demon-sank beast suddenly turned around, walked over, and stared at Hall Master Han, causing the other party's hair to stand on end. Xianxia, why don't we pass on the knockout? Perhaps medicine might be better. Recalling how the gigantic fellow charged at him relentlessly to kill him previously, Hall Master Han started trembling uncontrollably. Would this big fellow use this opportunity to get back at him? Xianxia told it to knock him out, But what if it used this chance to kill him instead? It was better to be safe than sorry. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Demon sank beast. What are you hesitating for? Hurry up. Xianxia frowned. Roar. Hearing the instruction, the demon sank beast howled in delight. Stepping forward, its thick wings immediately flew over and struck him. Aye. Hall Master Han really cried this time around. If only I'd known that this was your treatment method, I would surely have just given the middle-tier spirit stone to you for free. I don't need such compensation. Pang. In his current condition, it was impossible for Hall Master Han to escape. Thus, when the wings struck the back of his head, his vision turned black and he passed out. This. The corner of Zhao Feiwu's mouth twitched violently. Her body trembled slightly, and at this moment, she felt extremely glad that she was countless kilometers away from this fellow back when she was treated. It was fortunate that he only presented the solution via the wall of dilemma. If he had been the one to administer the treatment personally, would this have been her fate as well? Was there really such a treatment method in the world? Being feeble since young, she had seen innumerable top-notch physicians. However, she had never heard of a case where one had to be knocked out in order to be treated. Perplexed, she turned her gaze over, only to see Xianxia walking over to the unconscious Hall Master Han and placing his forefinger and middle finger on the other party's wrist. A moment later, he stood up, flicked his wrist, and a few silver needles appeared in his hand. Su 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 su. The silver needles shot through thin air and landed straight on the numerous acupoints throughout Hall Master Han's body. Then, with a grabbing action, all of the silver needles returned back to his hand. Done. Clapping his hand, Xianxia turned to Hall Master Sai and said, "Wake him up." Done. Everyone was dumbfounded. Were you really treating him, or were you just fooling around? After placing a few needles, you say that you're done? Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai stared at one another. They had clearly seen the location of where the needles landed. Rather than acupoints, those were Ming men. There wouldn't be any other physicians who would dare to touch these vulnerable spots. Even if this was a secret art of some kind, it should be impossible to induce a full recovery just by being pierced on several locations for a brief moment, right? Or was the treatment method simply too profound for them? Hall Master Sai had only seen the other party identifying treasures and earning their acknowledgement, but he had never seen the other party treating someone before. As such, he was totally baffled by the sight before him. Even so, since the other party had already spoken, he nodded his head and stepped forward. Pressing on the other party's philtrum, he infused a surge of Xianxia. Cough cough. Coughing violently, Hall Master Han opened his eyes. Who? Pressing against the ground, he hurriedly retreated backward. Xianxia, can I pass on the treatment? But before he could finish his words, he suddenly paused and his eyes widened. As a cultivator, he was well aware of the various changes in his body. Given how he was able to push himself backward just by exerting some force on his palm, and the unobstructed flow of origin energy in his body, there could only be a single possibility. He had fully recovered from his injuries. How was that possible? Doubtful, he stretched out his hand and grabbed forward. A massive handprint immediately gathered in the space in front of him. The handprint distorted the air in the surroundings with its immense might, reminiscent of a floating block of water, threatening to tear through space at any moment. Great ocean seizing hands? Hallmaster, why you have recovered. Seeing his actions, not only was Hall Master Sai and the other perplexed, the other elders who had collaborated with him on the formation also widened their eyes in shock, and their breathing hastened. Great Ocean Seizing Hands was Spirit Intermediate Tier battle technique. It was incomparably powerful, and without sufficient origin energy and strength, it was impossible to execute it. As the core of the formation, he was the one leading the fight against the demon sank beast previously. Thus, it was natural that he would bear the brunt of the attack and suffer the greatest damage. At the moment, every single one of them found it hard to even climb to their feet, and they felt as though they would breathe their last at any moment. Yet, the other party executed a battle technique which one could only utilize at their peak condition. Did it have to be so exaggerated? I've recovered. Hall Master Han widened his eyes in disbelief. Suddenly recalling something, he flicked his wrist and a spear appeared in his palm. Then, he shook it slightly. Wang! A surge of weapon intent was suddenly flicked out, and it stabbed into a gigantic boulder not too far away. Boom! The boulder exploded into innumerable smithereens. Clear passageway, flawless intent. Hall Master, you've recovered from the trauma you sustained before as well. Elder, whose lips shuddered. In truth, the reason why they, the elders of the Beast Hall, were willing to assist their Hall Master in capturing the demon-sank beast even despite the threat of danger was not due to his order but in awe of the Hall Master's character. Back then, in order to help them tame their spirit beasts, he had once entered the depths of a marsh and was bitten by a poisonous worm. Ever since then, there had been a blockage in his meridian, resulting in a trauma. As such, his weapon intent was unable to flow through his body, thereby ending his weapon cultivation there. If not for that, given the Hall Master's talent and strength, even if he couldn't tame the demon-sank beast, he would still be able to triumph over Luo Ming in the selections. There would be no need for him to go through so much trouble. The Hall Master had never demanded compensation from them for his sacrifice, and similarly, they were also willing to give their all for the Hall Master. No matter how tiring it was, they cultivated the collaborative offensive formation along with him without a word of complaint. They thought that the Hall Master would be limited by his lack of weapon intent for his entire life. Never in their dreams did they expect that just by being knocked out and pierced with a few needles, the other party would not only be able to execute the Great Ocean Seizing Hands, he would even be able to utilize weapon intent. What in the world happened? My trauma is gone. Since Elder who could tell this much, how could Hall Master Han, the person in question, remain ignorant of it? He hurriedly turned his sights to the young man before him. Oh, I realize that you have sustained some traumas, so I helped you treat those as well since it's convenient. You don't need to compensate me for that. Xianxia waved his hands casually. In truth, when Hall Master Han fought with the demon-sank beast previously, a book on him had already been compiled in the library of Heaven's Path. The reason why Xianxia went through all the trouble to knock the other party out and touch his pulse was to conceal the secret regarding his Heaven's Path Xianxia. The book compiled also reflected the other party's traumas as well. Since he was going to treat the other party, he couldn't possibly just go halfway. Besides, it wasn't difficult to do so either. Heaven's Path Xianxia could be turned into both medicine and poison with just a single thought of his. He had treated many people whose meridians had been blocked by lethal poison in the past too. Convenient. Hall Master Han's eyes reddened and he nearly went insane. He had looked up all of the physicians throughout Myriad Kingdom City, but none of them had a solution to his problem. Because the poisonous worm had bitten him while he was executing weapon intent, even though he was cured of the poison eventually, some remnants of the poison resulted in his meridians being permanently blocked. He didn't even mention his hidden problem, but Xianxia had already treated it out of convenience. Did you have to be that extreme? Suddenly, a thought flashed through Hall Master Han's mind and he asked, Elder Hu, how long have I been out for? Given how all of his injuries were treated and even his traumas were gone, the treatment process must have taken a significant length of time. 2 hours? 4 hours? Or perhaps a day? How long? From the moment you were knocked out until now? I think around a minute has passed. Elder Hu calculated. A minute. Hall Master Han's body swayed weakly. He had already been awake for half a minute, so that meant the treatment process took only a maximum of half a minute? How in the world did he do it? Since he was able to treat my injuries, he should be able to treat the other elders as well. Suppressing his agitation and shock, Hall Master Han suddenly thought of something and his eyes lit up. He hurriedly stepped forward and asked, Xianxia, Elder Hu, and the others have gotten injured for my sake. If you can treat them as well, I'll be eternally thankful to you. It was due to him that the elders had all landed in such a state. He couldn't possibly just leave them in the dumps now that he had recovered. Our young master is a formidable physician, so his services aren't cheap. Sun Qiong stepped forward. I understand. Hall Master Han hurriedly nodded his head. Flicking his wrist, the several thousand spirit stones that he had used to entice the demon-sank beast previously appeared in the ground before him. Under the sun, it looked like a mountain of crystal, and spiritual energy surged forth from the mini-mountain. Even though spirit stones were valuable as well, they meant nothing when compared to the lives of his old buddies. All right. Putting away the spirit stones into his storage ring, Xianxia first turned to Elder Hu and said, "I believe you all should know my treatment method." "I've heard everything." Elder Hu quickly nodded his head. "I know what I should do." After which, he turned to the demon-sank beast and said, "Come and hit me with all of your might. I can take it." The crowd. Xianxia staggered. "The heck? It would suffice as long as you lose consciousness. Do you need to flirt with a spirit beast like that?" Suppressing his urge to spurt blood, Xianxia said, "Cough cough. Actually, there's no need for it to make a move. You can use any means to make yourself faint. I'll be able to conduct my treatment as long as you're unconscious. It'll suffice as long as I lose consciousness." Elder Hu was taken aback. On the other hand, Hall Master Han's vision turned dark. "If it was that simple, why did you have to get the demon-sank beast to make a move on me? Do you know how to close to death? I came because of it." "All right." After confirming the treatment method, Elder Hu stretched out his palm and struck his forehead without any hesitation. "Pada." His vision immediately turned dark and he fainted. Xianxia stepped forward. A moment later, Elder Hu woke up. Leaping to his feet, his eyes glowed brightly. A moment later, Elder Hu woke up. Leaping to his feet, his eyes glowed in agitation. "It's your turn." After treating Elder Hu, Xianxia walked up to another elder. Knowing what Xianxia needed, without wasting any time, he immediately struck his own forehead. And thus, Zhao Feiwu and the others saw an incredibly bizarre sight unfolding before them. Renowned transcendent mortal beast tamers of the Myriad Kingdom City knocked themselves out as soon as Xianxia approached them. And after having some needles pierced into several acupoints, they regained their vitality and leaped around excitedly. So fast. Only at this moment did Hall Master Han finally get a chance to see the other party's treatment method and speed, and his throat turned dry. Even though Elder Hu's words had already given him some idea of it, witnessing it with his own eyes still left him in shock. Making a rough calculation, from the moment that the elders were knocked out to the point that the silver needles were extracted, not even 20 breaths had passed. In less than 20 breaths, in the young man's miraculous hands, the severe injuries of the patients disappeared. On top of that, the patients were even able to leap around freely as soon as they woke up, as though the injuries they had sustained before were imaginary. He didn't know much about physicians, so he couldn't make a clear judgment on the other party's capability. However, one thing he could make judgment on was the other party's beast-taming capability. To make the demon-sank beast submit with just a single bellow, and making it feed on grass willingly from an instruction, the other party's beast-taming ability had at least reached 5-star. A 5-star beast-tamer and a potential 5-star physician. Really, where in the world did this monster come from? Thank you for listening to Panda Audiobooks. If you love what you hear and want to support my work, check out the PayPal link in the description. Every bit helps. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notifications bell to stay updated with all our latest audiobook chapters. We'll see you in the next one.